Give us any chance, we'll take it. Read us any rule, we'll break it. We're gonna make our dreams come true.
Welcome to Night After Night, a podcast about 8 seasons in a row. I'm Lisa Fernandes, and
I'm Chris Jayawardena. Hello.
And we're happy to once again welcome our friends from These Days Are Ours podcast. Like to introduce yourselves, folks?
Hello, I'm Peter.
And I'm Joe.
And we have a podcast all about happy days.
Yeah. We're
Right.
Sorry. Oh, quiet.
No, that's right. We're at thesedaysaroours.libsyn.com, and we post a new episode every Tuesday morning, so check us out.
We're proud to have y'all here. We're going to be reviewing Shotgun Wedding, which is a two-parter, which started on Happy Days and continued on Laverne and Shirley. This is the opening of Season 5 for Laverne and Shirley.
And the opening of Season 7 for Happy Days,
Yes.
which is jumping ahead a bit for our show. Mm-hmm. We are currently covering Season 6, so yeah.
Ah, you guys are getting a glimpse of the future.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly chime in that it makes sense that a bunch of nerds would somehow deal with time travel, even in this sort of meta sort of sense.
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm going to open up this big old pot of wonder by telling everybody what the heck happened to Laverne and Shirley and to Happy Days as the season began. At the ending of Season 4, Laverne and Shirley was riding high. After 2 highly ranked seasons, it had just concluded its second season as the #1 program in America, and it was doing well in foreign and syndication markets. Then ABC looked at its successful Tuesday night lineup and said to itself, "Wow, I bet we can spread this out over 2 nights." Thus did the network choose to move Laverne and Shirley to Thursday nights for the 1979 to 1980 season. For the first time, it would lead off a block of programs. In this case, the premiering Benson, Barney Miller, and Soap. Perhaps presaging what was to come, those shows were mostly contemporary, sophisticated comedies and sitcoms that had little in common with the broad slapstick of Laverne and Shirley and its blue-collar audience. Replacing the show in their 8:30 p.m. Tuesday time slot was another Marshallverse show, Angie, which had done quite well in its first season as a mid-season replacement and, as Laverne and Shirley had done seasons before, was returning as part of the show's regular lineup in its second season. Well, the move was a complete disaster. Huge disaster for everybody involved and every show involved. By the time May 1980 rolled around, Laverne and Shirley had plunged from the #1 slot on the Nielsen ratings chart to completely out of the top 30. Completely out of it. Gone. Angie went from being a top 10 hit to falling out of contention completely as well. And Happy Days fell from 4th place to 17th. Only Three's Company, which actually increased the number of viewers it had taken in to become the second most popular show in America that year, survived the titanic loss of its Tuesday lineup mates. ABC tried to staunch the bleeding by moving Laverne and Shirley to Mondays at 8 p.m. by the winter of 1979, where it eventually was joined by Angie in the pre-Monday Night Football time slot. Meanwhile, another Gary Marshall-produced show, Good Time Girls, a World War II set sitcom, debuted in the Tuesday 8:30 p.m. spot in the mid-season, to equally disastrous ratings. When neither Angie nor Laverne and Shirley displayed improved ratings on Mondays, and after the Winter Olympics finished playing out, Laverne and Shirley was moved back to its Tuesday 8:30 p.m. slot that spring, where it would stay and eventually see slightly improved ratings in seasons 6 and 7. Angie and Good Time Girls, meanwhile, were burned off over the spring and summer in a Saturday night time slot. It was not an easy time for the show, as you can obviously guess from all of this. Penny Marshall, in the middle of divorcing Rob Reiner and experiencing occasional onset bouts of hysterical blindness, according to her autobiography, told People magazine at the time that ABC had repeatedly promised to move the show back to its original time slot if the ratings stayed in quote-unquote crummy. To quote Penny directly, so he kept sending messages. Is this crummy enough? It hasn't been a great year. Laverne and Shirley, as we're going to see, like Happy Days, battled the ratings blues in a number of different ways. Happy Days, well, this is a season where Happy Days burned down Arnold's. They started a new restaurant out of that. And Laverne and Shirley marry off and then Frank together. They launch an ambitious story arc where the girls go through military training. And there are murder mysteries and further forays in the 60s as they try to fix the ratings gap. Considering how many iconic episodes took place in season 5, specifically the highly memorable The Diner, it's amazing to learn how low the ratings really were this year. The end result would be to move the entire gang from the ordinary blue-collar world of Milwaukee to the glitzy world of California. This against the wishes of Penny Marshall and against the wishes of many members of the cast, as they wanted to move the show to New York, where things would stay blue-collar. That's an entirely different fish we're going to fry at the end of this season.
Oh, that was Shotgun Wedding, parts 1 and 2. It first aired on September 11th, 1979 and September 13th, 1979. That was a Tuesday and a Thursday. Part 1 was followed by the season premiere of a show called Angie, the Gary Marshall sitcom starring Donna Pescow as the sassy waitress who marries a wealthy doctor, played by Robert Hayes. In this episode, Angie tries to hide the fact that she's now rich from her old friends when they come to visit, so they won't think that she is a snob. On Tuesday, opposite Happy Days, CBS was airing the Wonder Woman episode Phantom of the Roller Coaster Part 2. This was the last ever episode of the live-action Wonder Woman show. And NBC had a special called Sharks, hosted by Jaws author Peter Benchley. Among the sharks covered on the special were the great white and the harmless Wobbegong shark. Part 2, Laverne and Shirley, was followed by the series premiere of Benson, a spinoff of Soap starring Robert Guillaume as a wisecracking butler who goes to work for a bumbling governor. On Thursday, opposite Laverne and Shirley, CBS aired the 1976 movie Gator, starring Burt Reynolds as a former con man who was enlisted to entrap a corrupt politician, and NBC reran Part 4 of the historical miniseries Holocaust. So those were your choices. The first time you had Happy Days versus Wonder Woman versus Sharks. And then the second time you had Laverne and Shirley versus Gator versus Holocaust.
Yeah.
Now that's an Asylum Films masterpiece waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And before I forget though, Gator, that's the White Lightning sequel, isn't it?
All I could find, I'm not that conversant with Burt Reynolds films from the 70s. I thought it was a film about wrestling gators or something, but Burt Reynolds plays a con man named Gator who is trying to entrap a corrupt politician. I don't know if he'd played that same character in another movie.
Because there's a great moonshiner carsploitation picture from the 70s called White Lightning where he plays Bobby Gator McCluskey.
Oh,
and
there you go.
I'm gonna look this up just to confirm.
So it's not Burt Reynolds wrestling alligators.
Sadly.
Because that was what I was hoping for. As soon as I saw it was like it was not about. As soon as I found out that he was Gator and that he was not wrestling gators, I was like, no, thank you. To that.
Oh, bummer. It doesn't even have any of the great character actors that are in the first movie. But yes, it is a sequel.
So I guess Gator was what was on opposite. I usually ask Peter, like, what would you have watched in those situations? Would you watch Happy Days, Wonder Woman, or Sharks?
I mean, it's pretty hard choosing between Wonder Woman or Sharks, but I guess I would have had to go with Sharks just because there were lots of other episodes of Wonder Woman I could watch in the future. But I don't know if there were going to be like reruns of Sharks.
and I mean, it's the comparison of, okay, do you want edutainment or do you want Hal Needham second unit car chases?
I would have to go with a Hal Needham film. But it's such a contrast to have Holocaust on one channel and Shotgun Wedding Part 2 on another. So viewers definitely had a choice that night. I was just shocked when I looked into the research, like how controversial it was to have a story about the Holocaust at all on television, and people being offended that you're covering the Holocaust on television, like this lowly, cheap, populist medium. You're having a Holocaust show. Yeah. I was like, wow, that's changed. There was no such thing as prestige television, I guess, back then. So.
Yeah, it's part of it's the prestige thing, and part of it's also just in terms of the era in which it comes from. I think is television was a medium that people were trying to do more important things, because this comes after Roots, and actually I believe it was from the same director as Roots, the Holocaust miniseries, and there were people trying to push the boundaries of what it could be, because as the 60s and 70s wore on, that's why we get sitcoms like Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days, is because, we start with the great TV Playhouse stuff that, gives us Sidney Lumet, gives us John Frankenheimer, gives these, really talented directors, the starting ground. And then we move into, essentially a decade and a half of, just, it's like, it's this week on FBI, and here's the new latest episode of Green Acres, and so basically it was just to kick up your feet after a long day at work. And especially at the end of the 70s, and into the early 80s, you have this whole push of like, well, the 70s kind of sucked.
Yeah.
And the 60s kind of sucked, and it was kind of rough and tumultuous in Vietnam, and MLK, MLK's passing, and Watergate, and people don't want to be reminded of this horrible travesty, which is, part of what I think happens when people say, oh, that's too soon, for a thing. That,
but also it is important to even if you don't necessarily want to talk about it, it's kind of important to talk about it, because otherwise, those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. And escapism is all well and good, but also you do have to be aware of things. Being able to escape is a privilege in many ways.
Well, I would like to point out that Fonzie Fonzie was living in the 1950s, was a fan of the classy TV shows. The one show that he admits to watching is Playhouse 90. So,
oh, nice.
So Fonzie was a big Playhouse 90 fan, and it's the only show that he would let his dog watch. Was Playhouse 90.
I miss Sparky.
Yeah, poor
Spunky. I miss Spunky.
I miss Spunky.
I got his name wrong. I am sorry. I have to turn my card in now.
Oh, we're gatekeeping you as Happy Days fans, but anyway, there was some crazy stuff playing that night and on Tuesday too. So Phantom of the Roller Coaster Part 2, I got to endorse that one. That one I have seen. Not for years, but I have seen it. And this was the end. This was it for Wonder Woman. So they went out, as far as I'm concerned, they went out on the tippity top. And they
went out with a bang.
That is amazing. If I had been given the choice, I would have watched Wonder Woman for the first part of Shotgun Wedding was on, and I would have watched the whole Shotgun Wedding Part 2 and Benson lineup, it's good, but the reason why that lineup never gelled is because those sitcoms just feel like they're from a different world than Laverne and Shirley is from. It just not gel. It doesn't gel. That's why it never worked. That's probably why everything bombed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And here's what happens in the episode. The Cunninghams plus Fonzie are all vacationing near pristine Lake Pinewood for the weekend. Hot and heavy Richie and Lori Beth have agreed to date around all weekend, and with that in mind, Fonzie wants Richie to come with him to a secluded farm to make out with the highly guarded daughters of sugar-happy farmer Bumperguard, Helga and Inga. Richie and Fonzie eventually manage to do this by disguising themselves in a cow costume, but the ecstasy of making out with Helga and Inga soon turns to agony when they find themselves chased by an amorous bull. Bee-stung and injured while running across the farmer's field, they find themselves at the medical mercy of Laverne and Shirley, who, in spite of actual professional training as nurses, manage to make a mess out of healing the boys. Fonzie does reward them by giving them a trip to a campground as they're up the river with Frank and their friends. Fonzie and Richie make the mistake of going back to the scene of the crime, and that's when Farmer Bumperguard catches them. They outmaneuver him, but a dance sequence and a makeout later, they end up held at gunpoint. The farmer suggests a shotgun wedding, which both girls are eager for, but neither guy wants to be hitched to them. Richie and Fonzie blurt out that they can't marry the farmer's daughters. They're engaged to Laverne and Shirley. To bolster the lie, Richie breaks away to grab the girls and save Fonzie's life. Laverne and Shirley have their own problems to deal with, ranging from a beast of burden Carmine to a cranky Frank and Edna to a duck hunting Lenny and Squiggy. When Richie drags them to the farm, the girls stand up for Richie and Fonzie, but are forced to participate in a competitive hoedown with the Bumperguard girls, where they can claim the hands of their grooms. But do they want to get married? Will they get married? And what will Carmine think? How do y'all feel about this peek in the future?
Well, obviously, this was breaking one of the cardinal rules of television, which is don't mess with success. But I was trying to find out who was running ABC at that time. Was it Fred Silverman?
I think this was just before Fred Silverman moved to NBC.
And Fred had been a big success. He was a big failure at NBC, unfortunately.
Oh yeah,
Super Train.
he was the one who gave the world Super Train, right?
Yes.
And they relentlessly made fun of Fred Silverman on Saturday Night Live. There was a famous unaired sketch called "Inside the Silverman Bunker," which was like Adolf Hitler at the end of the war. They were portraying him as being like Fred Silverman. Yeah,
That's kind of funny in a tasteless sort of way.
Yeah, it was you could almost see the sense of it. Laverne and Shirley had been number one for 2 years. They want to double down on Laverne and Shirley. Why not try and spread the success out over a couple of nights, move their number one hit to another night, and maybe build up the Thursday night lineup? But obviously it backfired, and then they couldn't get it back. So that's kind of sad for everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Just to quickly, because I have a research note. Fred Silverman had just left to go to NBC in 1978. So it was after his tenure.
Yeah.
So, Fred, you're off the hook for this one. Super Train, I guess, is still on your resume there, but this move, we can't blame that on poor Fred. But whoever it was, I'm sure there must have been firings among the middle managers at ABC probably over this stuff. Somebody must have lost their jobs over this, right?
Yeah.
That's how it works, right?
Oh yeah.
I would certainly would hope so.
Yeah.
So
somebody had to have been removed. Something had to have happened. I don't know what happened in the hierarchy, but man, yeah, they slaughtered that golden goose. I think only the Winter Olympics saved them there.
But yeah, it was a sad thing for everybody. ABC got a little greedy, and it ended up a disaster for them. So
yeah.
That's what I thought about it.
It's a mess. It ultimately is a mess. It killed the golden goose, which really stinks.
Yeah.
And and it ruined the trajectory of Laverne and Shirley in a lot of ways. Happy Days managed to recover to a degree, and it goes up and down and up and down. The cut and the cut quality goes in and out, in and out, in and out. So, yeah, it's a mess. It is just a totally qualified disaster. Disaster.
Disastrous TV shows make for good podcasting.
Yes, they do.
Of course they do. Oh yeah. No, the amount of gossip we get to talk about on Night After Night is one of the highlights, I'd like to say.
Oh yeah. Definitely. We tried to keep it honed in on what the heck was going on backstage, combined with what the heck was going on when on screen, and you could compare what was going on in the writers' room to what happening on screen. But yeah, that is what happened, and that is the disaster that we that stares us right in the face as we open the season.
With both barrels?
Indeed, with both barrels flying. Oh goodness. Okay. This two-parter was directed and written by two entirely different factions of writers on both shows, which is interesting because you can definitely tell the difference in tone between a Laverne and Shirley episode and a Happy Days episode. If you watch these two shows sandwiched in a single entity, and watch it for a whole hour, it's really interesting. I was wondering what you guys thought watching them back to back.
Well, it was more slapsticky in the second half of it. It was certainly a much broader, even sillier form of humor in the second one. But this part one is already pretty broad for Happy Days because you have Henry Winkler and Ron Howard in a cow suit running around. And then, of course, you have the big scene where Laverne and Shirley are tending to the injuries of the Fonz and Richie, and they're pulling the boots off and tending to the bee stings, and everybody's falling all over each other. And
there's one particular moment, very suggestive moment, where it looks like where Laverne is just draped over Richie's body.
Yeah, keeping him warm because she doesn't want him to go into shock. You know.
Right.
Yes.
So it's,
I had to make an animated GIF of that like immediately as soon as I watched the episode. It's like, oh yeah, that's happening.
So
Hey, innuendo works for Three's Company. It can work for Happy Days.
Oh yeah.
It definitely works for
I
Laverne
think
and Shirley. Definitely.
So I think Happy Days was trying to be a little bit more like Laverne and Shirley this week. They were going for a little bit crazier story than they normally do. So
yeah. I wonder if part of the reason for that is because the script for the Happy Days segment was written by Fred Fox Jr., who got his start through a connection with his father. Knew Gary Marshall, and he was set, and so he got the gig writing "Excuse Me, May I Cut In?" And apparently that went over so well when it was recorded that Gary brought him on as a story editor, for Happy Days.
Yeah, Fred Jr. was really one of Gary's most trusted lieutenants. I think he had Fred in some capacity on practically every show that he did. He was on Joni Loves Chachi and Who's Watching the Kids, which was, well, to us, Who's Watching the Kids is still happening as we're discussing season 6. And I think Fred remained loyal to the Happy Days brand. I think he worked even on the reunion special. And recently on Twitter, we were trying to identify everyone on the Happy Days softball reunion team, if you saw that picture. And I think Fred was even there. So I don't know. I think Fred would do whatever he was assigned to do. And, I think Fred was a utility infielder, basically, for Gary. I think he would write whatever the tone required. So
certainly, especially if it even comes down to being the man who has the notoriety of having written Hollywood Part 3.
Well, we've talked a lot about that 3-parter on our show, and I personally feel that its infamous reputation is perhaps undeserved. I was going to say that I think that 3-parter is actually, once you turn your brain off, it's actually a lot of fun.
I do think Happy Days got less good over time, but I don't think that's because of Hollywood Part 3. Like, Hollywood Part 3 is just a fun, goofy episode.
Yeah, I think that its reputation is kind of undeserved. It's harmless. I think more damage was done to the Happy Days brand by the episode where Fonzie goes blind than the one.
Oh my God, that just gave me a freaking flashback. Oh wow.
Yeah, I vividly remember that episode.
And there's really only so mad you can get about an episode where Fonzie water ski jumps over a shark set to music that kind of sounds like the Always Sunny in Philadelphia background music.
Right.
I have vivid childhood memories of that episode, and I don't know why that specific episode always sticks out to me, but I really, really remember that one.
Oh, you'll remember it. It's very memorable, but I don't think in any good ways. So I think if anything damaged, I'm gonna blame that episode more so than jumping the shark. I hate that phrase, by the way. I wouldn't even call our episode that. I call our episode, I think, Shump the Jark, because I didn't want to say jump the shark. So
I will say that even like some of the worst episodes of Happy Days are better than some of the worst episodes of Laverne and Shirley, because there's some doozies in season 8. There's some doozies in season 8. There's Bully Show, which we have watched and both loathe. There's Road to Burbank, which is has a very reputation in the fandom for a lot of reasons, and we'll get to that in a while. But yeah, I will always say that at least Happy Days has a great ending. At least it is, it's a beautiful ending. It's consistent. You continuously care about these characters all the way through the show, for most part, from what I've seen, from what I can remember. And honestly, altogether, it hangs together nicely. From start to finish, it seems to work. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that the even the last few seasons have a certain dignity to them. And I think stuff in the last season, like Richie's return and the passages, a 2-parter, are both very well handled and treat the characters with a lot of respect. So
and also great is the one where Fonzie Fonzie meets a ghost.
Oh,
Who
yeah.
may or may not just be a dream.
Yeah.
And he learns a lesson about not being too nostalgic, which is kind of funny coming from Happy Days. But
It took him the whole series to learn that nostalgia is a death trap, and it can be a literal death trap. He almost dies in his dream because of being too nostalgic. He almost gets hit by a train. But this episode, I mean, this shotgun wedding two-parter, this is as frivolous as it gets, really. I think this might...
Well, I mean, aside from the attempted death by shotgun.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Even then, it's still very like Yosemite Sam, Elmer Fudd kind of violence.
Oh,
though.
yeah. We're definitely in cartoon territory.
Yeah.
It reminded me of things like Snuffy Smith, the comic strip, and maybe Little Abner or something. It's I don't know.
The farmer and his daughters in this episode are basically whatever the Wisconsin version of rednecks are.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, are those girls supposed to have grown up in Wisconsin, or are they? How long have Helga and Inga been living in Wisconsin? Because they both certainly have the accent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess they grew up isolated on that farm with their dad.
Yeah, I guess with they're only the dad teaching them English, so they.
Well, it's speaking anecdotally, I know somebody who grew up in America here and who grew up in the and as an actor that I've worked with, and their family is Vietnamese. And they only really spoke Vietnamese in the house, and so her accent still is still pretty thick. It's gotten better. She's really worked on it for her craft, and it's one of those. Just I noticed that it just depends. Like it can happen in these sort of isolated communities. Now, what that makes me then wonder is we're talking about Wisconsin rednecks. Does that mean that Wisconsin rednecks are all like these sort of like weird out of the past sort of like first generation immigrants to the United States, that they all like they're only like a generation separated from I don't know the immigrant characters making their way westward in Heaven's Gate or something? Like I don't know.
Well, these
I guess.
Yeah, these accents, which I guess are supposed to be Swedish, are pretty far into the realm of stereotype or sketch comedy type accents. There, I don't think that they're. There was a comedian who called himself Yogi Jorgensen in the 50s, and he talked like this, but that was all a character that he was playing. He would say things like "Yompin Yimini," that kind of stuff. So this is very, very much in that vein. So that's why I was wondering, like, did Helga and Inga learn English off of old comedy records, or did they go to school at all? Why?
They wouldn't have been old comedy records for them at the time.
I guess no. They would have been new comedy records. They would have been listening to Yogi Jorgensen's records as soon as they came, as soon as they got there. Or how were they getting them? But also, if the dad is so conservative, like. Why are his daughters like in like Daisy Dukes and like cut off blouses and stuff? Like
it's like you're going to give the boys driving by some big right wrong ideas there.
And where did Helga learn how to dance? Because in this episode she does like this straight up Broadway dance routine. Like something you'd see in like the Ziegfeld Follies. And where did she learn how to do that? Did she come up with all of that herself? Which is very impressive if it is.
Yeah, and incredibly anachronistic, too.
Yeah.
It's very Julie Newmar, is what I was going to say. It's very Julie Newmar, and it's very... perhaps they're getting influenced by things that are outside their sphere. I mean, Fonzie knows about them somehow. So, it's possible.
Well, I mean, doesn't he know about them because of the newspaper clipping about their father murdering a Tupperware salesman?
True.
Or they're really shooting. Assaulting with a deadly weapon, at least.
The salesman, I hope, is alive. I don't think there's a straight-up murderer on I don't think they'd go that far with it. But
I mean, it's certainly, I don't know. I would certainly watch the show more often, but that's just me.
Chris. Oh, dear.
I just wanted to quickly to chime in, as we're sort of getting into it. So, because we're also getting into like sort of the premise and kind of the ludicrousness of the premise. It's just, I remember Lisa and I were talking about this, is like this whole setup is the desperation of Fonzie to, when he's out on this trip, and I guess they're going to be gone for like a week, I guess is sort of what's implied in the Lori Beth conversation.
Yeah.
But it's like
weekend. She says weekend. She says weekend.
Weekend. That's what I thought. Like, and that was why I was so baffled by the early scene where she's like, "You'll be okay with me dating, right?" You know, like you're apart for a weekend. Like, are you like that desperate for? Well, then I think they wanted to give Richie like plausible deniability so that he can pursue other girls over this long weekend. I guess they're that sexually charged, both Richie and Lori Beth, that they have to.
Okay, so apparently by season 7, Richie and Lori Beth have an open relationship, more or less, which might be a good thing, because like an earlier episode established that Richie gets like super pissy and jealous every time Lori Beth so much as looks at another guy, and then in another episode, he cheats on her with another girl and lies to her about it. So, like...
Yeah, and then not too long after they settled that difference, when Richie they basically had to break up and start over again after Richie cheats on her. Then he kisses other girls, but as part of a science experiment. It's a whole thing.
Oh, Lord. They're like Happy Days Carmine and Shirley.
Yeah, so like, you know, maybe they shouldn't be in a relationship at all.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because one gets the sense that Lori Beth can and should do way better than Richie.
It's healthier in this episode than it is in Date with a Razorhead, at least.
Oh God, yeah, true. That's true. Because at least when it comes to Carmine and Shirley, they have this like push-pull. Are we dating? Are we not dating? How dare you look at that man, or dare you look at that woman? Oh, don't care if you look at that man or a woman. I'm dating here. You're dating there. It's so inconsistent over 5 seasons that you're utterly confused as to what the heck's going on. 20%, 90% of the time.
Well, I wondered that in this episode because when Shirley finds out that she is going to be forced to marry Richie, she doesn't even really seem that concerned about Carmine. Like, oh, I'll tell Carmine later, and I'll break it to Lori Beth. Like it's not a big deal to her. Like, she's kind of into it. And Laverne is, of course, also kind of into the idea of marrying Fonzie. So,
Laverne is way into it. Laverne is way into it.
Oh yeah.
She's way into
Laverne is gonna get laid.
Yeah.
That's a lot of it.
He's hot. He's hot and he's Italian. So she's super happy.
Exactly. And also with the Shirley aspect is that Shirley is so into kind of the fantasy. She always has to build these realities in her head. And so in her mind, everything's going to be fine because I'm going to do this and this and this and this, and everything's going to be perfect. Because that was like we've talked a lot on Night After Night about how that's kind of the whole thing from her mom, is her mom would like give her sort of like these instructions of how to be happy. Yeah. And, you know, you see that it doesn't make her happy. And it's not what she wants to do. And so it's like, it's a way of her rewriting the script, you know, but that gets really heavy, but it's like, that's where it makes a lot of sense to me that she's into it. And, you know, and her and Richie do have chemistry. I mean, the Excuse Me, May I Cut In is an adorable episode. Yes. So it's she could do worse. College boy and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Richie will be less of a controlling asshole to her than he can be to Lori Beth.
Gosh. The whole romantic brouhaha here is kind of amazing because there's even this bit where the only reason the marriage isn't completely set in cement is because Lenny is eavesdropping on what's happening.
Yeah, otherwise, Lenny and Squiggy don't really seem to have much reason to be on this trip at all.
Nope, not at all.
I'm not exactly sure. They're funny because they have some lines when they come in and they're going on what looks like safari. Yeah. They look like they're going big game hunting or something. And then they just come into sort of the Deus Ex Machina at the end of the part 2. But... yeah, otherwise, I'm not sure what function they serve in this story.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, that's kind of, so we're, as of this recording right now, Lisa and I are a few episodes into watching season 5, and that's kind of seeming to become a trend. Like, there's always sort of like, there's sort of like they kind of, flanderize is maybe too much of a term for right now, at least where they're at currently, but they definitely like, figure out what their sort of general function is, which is to create a certain amount of comedy, and then just kind of insert them into the different stories at this point. And it might just be that, they needed something to take place, or, there were other ideas that got trimmed down. The thing about, by the way, the safari outfits is, I believe, and Lisa can confirm this, confirm or deny, that I think Lenny's outfit, at least, is the one he had as the big game hunter from Call Me a Taxi, I believe.
It definitely is.
Yeah, so that's definitely in that range. But because the thing is, what they say is ostensibly their point of being there is we have the scheme to start a duck zoo of some sort?
Oh, yeah. Duck circus. I thought they wanted to start some
circus.
Duck circus, that's what it is. It didn't have that exactly in my notes, yeah.
And Shirley finds the idea ridiculous, but Laverne, she's kind of impressed by it, and it seems genuinely interested in seeing a bearded duck, which I love. It's very endearing.
Laverne is always on the side of the boys. She's almost a third of them when they're in a group together. She's almost always on the side, almost always rather hang out with them. Insert my Laverne Lenny feels here. They're everywhere, but especially even here, there's a little bit of it. I mean, he's deliberately interfering when she's about to marry Fonzie, which she kind of wants, but he apparently doesn't want it to happen. I was going to point out the fact that after all of this, the girls are satisfied with the wedding picture. They just want a souvenir of everything they've been through. I think that's funny in some way. I was going to mention the fact that the slapstick in the scene where we have our hoedown is incredible. This is sorry, go ahead.
It reminded me a lot of something out of a Jackie Chan movie because it's slapstick, but it's also an action scene.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. They even credited the choreographer this time. It was Bob Thompson.
Oh,
Bob Thompson, you did good.
You did.
Yeah.
Although I have to say that the square dance caller was certainly giving some bad instructions to those dancers. He was always telling them throw them over the fence and stuff. What did you think they were going to do? So I think they were getting the worst of it. I think that I don't know that the square dance caller was being entirely honest there. I don't know where he was coming up with these moves, but because they would always do some sort of physically abusive act that was exactly what the square dance caller told him to do. So I thought that was strange.
Yeah, I know.
Well, yeah, but then Laverne and Shirley made a comeback.
Yeah, so I guess the square dance caller started rooting for them instead.
Well, you always root for the underdog, and they suddenly became the underdog real quick.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But by the way, did you look into the careers of the actresses playing of Helga and Inga at all?
Yes, I did, and I have some interesting factoids about the two of them. So,
cool.
Vicky Fedrick played as Helga. She would later show up in the Marshallverse on Mork and Mindy as Sutra in Mork versus the Necrotrons, which I just love that title. But although I know that episode can not be anywhere near as badass as that episode name. She was also another of the actors who was on the Marshallverse show that somehow ended up in Dream On later down the road. So go figure. Every once in a while, we'll come across them. It's they were in an episode of Dream On. I don't know what the connection was.
Michael's in the show.
Right. Anyway, so due to the dancing background for Vicky, she was a menage partner and all that jazz, as well as a small, kind of a low-key C-level supporting role in chorus line. But one of my favorite things, and just because this is now I think the second or third time we've had able to bring this up on Knife Tonight, she ended up in Body Rock, which at least is the second time. Second time it's been name dropped.
Well, I noticed.
Delightful.
I noticed she'd also been in the movie Chopper Chicks in Zombie Town.
Oh man.
Oh
God.
wow.
Did I miss? I missed that. Damn it.
Why that stood out to me was that I used to be on a zombie movie podcast, and I once wrote a little song called Chopper Chicks in Zombie Town, sung to the tune of Allentown by Billy Joel, where Chopper Chicks in Zombie Town.
That's great.
So, and I did a whole plot summary of that movie. I don't remember, I don't know who Vicky Frederick actually played in that movie, but it was, she had kind of an interesting career. By the way, what is their last name? What is the family's last name? I tried to spell it. Bumpergard?
Bumpergard.
I think it's Bumpergard.
Yeah. I presume it's with a U in there. It starts off with a U.
I had it as Bumpergard, Bumpergard. But
that's what I had too. Yeah.
Bumpergard. Well, sometimes they say it in sometimes they say it in a more normal way, and then sometimes they really exaggerate it. Bumpergard, so sometimes they just say it as Bumpergard, and sometimes they say Bumpergard. And these episodes also have a narrator that I've never heard on any other episodes. Who is this guy?
I was wondering if anybody had an answer to that. I was so confused.
Yeah, for a second I thought maybe it was Al, but no, it's not him. It just sounds a little bit like him. And then we never find out.
Yeah, normally they bring Al with them on these trips, and then or they write a letter to Al, and then Al will read like a postcard or something. But this time they didn't bring anybody with them on the trip to do the narrating. So there's just this narrator guy who's, I think, in both episodes that they never identify, and we never know who he was. So, and he's not credited. So
yeah, normally if there's a voiceover on Laverne and Shirley, when you had to link together two parts, one of the cast members does it. Michael McKean does it for Murder on the Moose Jaw Express with an English accent, which is going to be a treat.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's him.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to that.
That's one of his first British accents that he gets to try out.
This wasn't any actor that I recognized by voice. We haven't actually talked about F. William Parker as the farmer. Vernon.
Vernon.
Yeah.
Vernon Bumpergard.
I keep wanting to call him Vern in an earnest voice. Know what I mean, Vern?
A royal banner.
And I think that guy, F. William Parker, I think basically he's still working, or he has been working within the last few years. So he's still at it, still going.
Yeah. It was active as of 2018. It looks like. Yeah, he was. Like Revenge of the Nerds, Lost Highway, Terms of Endearment is what he's most known for. But the dude was in the Chimera episode of X-Files back in the 90s. So it's like, okay.
That is so cool.
So yeah, that guy has a pretty cool resume. The only other person we haven't talked about was Will Hunt as the preacher.
Oh.
He was, well, I mentioned him because both he and F. William Parker were on a Western show called Paradise that I have no memory of at all. But they were both on a Western show that lasted like 3 or 4 seasons that I have no memory of at all in the 80s. It would have been odd to have a Western on TV at that time, but they were both on it. So I wondered if they shared war stories from being on Laverne and Shirley or something.
It's a good question. Yeah, the one thing I had to point out about Will Hunt is he got TV roles here and there, including a couple of spots on Hello Larry, and I wanted to give a quick Portland represent for that one.
Oh my God!
Hello Larry.
Joanna Gleason was on that show.
Oh yeah,
Cool.
yeah, and George Mamoli from Phantom of the Paradise is in it as well.
Yeah, and
cool.
And he also was it they call him Uncle Tom, I think, the guy who ran the kids shoe store in the Cruise Part 1.
Yes.
Yeah, one of 4 people I think we've seen so far from Phantom of the Paradise who end up in Laverne and Shirley in some way or another.
So many
cool.
connections. So cool.
Yeah, my theory is it's because Cindy was friends with Francis, and Francis was friends with De Palma. Is my theory?
Oh, okay.
Huh.
Well, I always feel, if you've ever seen the credits to Hello Larry, which has a great theme song, the footage they got of George for the credits is like so unflattering looking. There's a photo of him like disco dancing and pointing in the air like Travolta. And it's like,
wow.
It's just it's so bad. And I was like, if I had been him, I wouldn't have wanted that to be on TV every week. So I would have been glad that I think I would have been glad that show was canceled if I had been him. But
well, he didn't live too much longer after that anyway. So there is that.
He didn't. Unfortunately, George didn't live very long. But some interesting people. Have we talked a little bit about? I don't know. Do you guys on your podcast have you talked about Joel Zwick?
Yes. Especially through season 4, I had to dig up a lot of information. I dug up a little more. One of the things I thought was kind of cool, this is a real quick Joel Zwick thing. This is more of a trivia note than anything else. But, Jerry Paris obviously did the Happy Days side because it's Jerry Paris. This guy was Mr. Happy Days director. And what's kind of cool is you get to, also see the differences in the directing, where Jerry has very snappy vaudevillian style dialogue, and then Joel was like really into like the physical side of the directing set pieces. And what's interesting though is the similarity they have is they both got their start in show business as actors, because Joel took acting classes in college and for comedy, and it kind of was like a one thing led to another, and he sort of like practically took a dare, like saying like I could do that about directing sitcoms, and that's how he got his first sitcom gig. And then obviously this is novel knowledge for us on Night After Night, but yeah, Jerry Paris had roles in both B movie gems like Drive a Crooked Road, which is freaking excellent film noir, and then other high caliber films like The K Mutiny, Marty, which is apparently the shortest Oscar winning film of all time. So
I adore Marty. I adore that movie.
I was hyped to learn that Joel Zwick had directed My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I couldn't believe that. That seemed like a very bizarre.
Wait, is he Greek?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But he also but he also directed the Fat Albert movie.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, yes. I know. I remember that.
That kind of blew my mind. Directed both Fat Albert and Big Fat Greek Wedding. That's what I call a career, right there.
Oh yeah, and not to mention also many episodes of Girl Meets World and Full House as well, I believe.
Okay, that's good.
Did he direct the episode of Girl Meets World that's like anti-communism?
Oh, that's a good question.
I bet you.
And he did 24 episodes across 3 years. I'm trying to look through these episode titles and I have no clue.
Well, if we're talking about the career of Jerry Paris, the one thing that I want to promote that Jerry directed and Gary Marshall wrote was a made-for-TV movie called Evil Roy Slade. And if people have not checked out Evil Roy Slade, oh my gosh, should they ever. It is a truly off-the-wall comedy western starring John Astin from the Addams Family as a western bad man, bank robber type guy. It's really, really funny, and Happy Days fans should definitely watch it. It was something that Gary and Jerry worked on before Happy Days. So definitely check out Evil Roy Slade. It's very easy to find. I will say that.
Cool.
That's on my list of things to watch. I haven't watched it. But...
Oh, snap. And just a real quick note about that film. So Lisa, a guest actor we've got coming up on an episode in a few weeks also is featured on in Evil Roy Slade.
Oh, cool.
Mr. Dick Shawn.
Oh, that's awesome.
The reason why I knew that film so well was it was one of my father's favorite films. He would quote lines from it, and he would act out little scenes from Evil Roy Slade. He would pretend to be Evil Roy Slade when he was playing with his kids. And so I saw it, and then it turned out to have all these Happy Days connections. It turned out to be written by Gary and directed by Jerry. So, that was a great thing. That was a great discovery. And so one of these days, Peter, I'm going to guilt you into watching Evil Roy Slade.
It sounds great. That is one hell of a title.
I was going to say Carol Ida White is in there. I do believe she's in that.
Oh, cool.
Wait, in
Evil
Roy Slade as well?
Yeah, she's in that. I'm pretty sure.
Oh my gosh.
I do occasionally guilt Peter into watching Gary Marshall related stuff, and I think I even tried. I think it even got you to watch Angie, and I think there was not too much enthusiasm on your part for Angie.
Yeah, Angie was
I haven't watched Angie yet. Me.
The main thing I remember about Angie is that it has the guy from Airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't terrible. All I remember about it is that it has the guy from Airplane giving a performance like he's a serial killer.
Oh, dear.
Oh.
So he's very serious.
That's really all I remember about it.
I think he's very, very serious, but he's meant to be like the serious one to Donna Pescow's more flamboyant one, I guess.
Well, yeah, and like that works. Like his seriousness works really well in Airplane because like it's got all these. It's an extremely wacky movie where almost everyone is playing it straight. But in Angie, it just comes across as incredibly, incredibly awkward.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, what about you guys? Are you guys real familiar with Angie? Did you watch it? Were you fans of it? Did you enjoy it?
I was but
never seen it.
I was but a wee twinkle in my parents' eyes when the show came on the airwaves. But I have like seen one episode of it. I've been meaning to watch it since it has its origin point in a Rosie Greenbaum spinoff that never took off.
Oh, cool. Well, I only watched it because of this podcast. I was trying to watch all the other Gary Marshall shows, and eventually I got to this show Angie, and I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I wonder what Peter will think of this, and Peter didn't think much of it. So. Oh well. It does have Doris Roberts in it as Angie's mom, and from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah. I know she is. Yeah, that's cool.
And The Honeymoon Killers. She's also in a movie called The Honeymoon Killers, which is a great film.
Man. Yeah, it's one of the many ones I know I need to get around to seeing.
Definitely watch that. Yeah, definitely watch The Honeymoon Killers. She plays the honeymoon killer. She plays the main killer's friend. So she's great. She's great in it. So what haven't we covered about Shotgun Wedding?
Some stuff. I got some stuff to say.
So go ahead.
There's something amazingly desperate and interesting about the two of them cramming themselves into a cow suit in an attempt to get to these girls. In a cow suit.
Yeah.
They were so desperate to get to Helga and Inga that they dressed up like this. This was before the movie Top Secret, so this was maybe Top Secret ripped off this idea from...
Yeah. Do you think Fonzie and Richie invented fursuits?
I mean, it would definitely stand to reason a little bit. Because that's the thing, right? Is, when it comes to TV, there's often The Simpsons did it, but, in many cases, Happy Days did it. Yeah. So maybe Happy Days did it first.
Well,
I was going to say regarding the cow suit, though, is that I was amazed at how coordinated they actually were inside of that thing.
Yeah.
Props to Ron Howard. He is able to keep up with Henry, and I don't know how he could tell where he was going, but he does seem to get around very well.
Mm-hmm.
The most uncomfortable aspect of this though are all the jokes. So many jokes about bulls and what end of the cow that Richie is on, and God dang, many jokes about Richie being, I think, sexually assaulted by the bull. Is that the joke here?
Yeah.
So,
kinda, yeah.
It's leaning in that direction. Yeah. Thankfully, it was the bees that sting him, but that maybe that's a euphemism.
But I mean, there's there's the joke.
But it was.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, hey, on the bright side, the Fonz is too cool to fart, so at least there's that.
Yes, he does not. He does not. So, but they're gonna say well, what if a bull comes up after us? They said, and Fonzie says, considering what side of the bull you're on, I'd make friends with him. So I was thinking, oh, okay, so that's the joke. So that the bull is going to. By the way, isn't it bizarre? Season 6 begins with Fonzie fighting a bull or riding a bull, and then season 7 they're being chased by a bull. So I guess it's bulls at the beginning of every season now. I
mean, does it keep going until the Matador spits?
I guess. Okay,
it's not over until the Matador spits.
Okay, that was another thing. Obviously, that is a parody of "It Ain't Over Till the Fat Lady Sings," right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought that expression goes back to the 30s or the 40s or something, and I could only trace it back to 1975. So that would have been a fairly new thing to say. How is that possible?
Oh, forget it, Jake. It's Marshall verse.
I guess so. But didn't you think that expression, the second caveman probably said that to the first caveman or something? I thought it went back to.
Oh, that's what you say. I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's it seems like the kind of a phrase that would have been around longer. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was apparently a 70s phrase. I had no idea. It doesn't sound like a 70s phrase. It sounds like something maybe from the 30s or 40s or something, but it didn't sound like a 70s phrase. But
I don't know. I don't know if were any of us alive during the 70s?
I was not.
I was not.
I was
at the end of it.
Okay. Yeah, because like my thinking is because whenever I hear like someone say "keep on trucking," I'm just like, the hell are they talking about? And yet it's like,
Well,
and like
okay.
I mean, I've seen the shirts, and I've seen its use in things, and my mom told me about it when I was 7 and all that, and so it's like, okay, this is I don't get it, but fine. So that's what I mean, because just it's like that's the interesting thing also about this episode and about, as you're saying, like these kind of weird like associations, right? You kind of get these layers of. This thing reminds you of this thing, reminds you of this thing. And but like certain things stick. And, I guess that's the thing about that phrase, the use of the phrase, it ain't over till the matador spits. It sounds like something that, is almost made for the show. So I'm actually surprised that it even existed. It's some sort of nomenclature before then.
Well, if it hadn't, that would have been a very surreal thing to have said. And that for both Fonzie and Laverne to have both said, they both knew that expression.
But true.
Or maybe
true enough, but you remember Penny, right behind Penny is that backdrop that's got the weird ass freaking scene because the production designers probably had to throw that set together in like a day.
Yeah.
Did anybody else notice that?
It's not the most convincing outdoor scene I've ever seen. No.
Yeah.
Did anybody but me try to pay attention to what music the square dance band was playing? Did anybody recognize the songs?
Kind of sound. I heard "Turkey in the Straw" in there. "Turkey in the Straw" is definitely in there.
And during the wedding proper, they were playing
the wedding march, the Wagner, the Wagner thing. But the square dance music, I heard "Old Joe Clark," "Fare Thee Well," "Old Joe Clark," "Goodbye Betsy Brown," "Fare Thee Well." Does anybody know that one? "Fare Thee Well," "Old Joe Clark," "Goodbye." We had to learn that. That's an old bluegrass song. We had to learn it for some reason in elementary school. And
did you have to square dance in gym class, and that was what they played?
Yes, we had to do that stupid thing.
Thanks a lot, Henry Ford.
I did too.
Yes,
dead old racist.
Yes, we had to learn square dancing. But I also heard the the Arkansas Traveler, which most people might know as the "I'm bringing home a baby bumblebee," that thing.
Yeah.
And supposedly that was at one time the state song of Arkansas. But why they're playing the?
Is it racist? Is it racist? Because every time I hear a song that I haven't heard before, and I hear that it used to be a state anthem, I think, okay, how many slurs does it have?
I don't know that. I've only ever heard it. The only time I've ever heard it with lyrics is "I'm bringing home a baby bumblebee."
Yeah, that's the stuff I've heard it from. Yeah,
that's what I've heard. But I didn't even know it was a song beyond that until I saw it on Mystery Science Theater 3000. It's in the Junior Rodeo Daredevils. It's the music all through.
Oh,
Junior
yeah.
Rodeo. They play the Arkansas Traveler. And
gotcha. Okay, so that's so that's why that sounded a bit familiar. Yeah.
So
I was actually, speaking of Mystery Science Theater, I was expecting with the hoedown caller to suddenly call out now promenade and and then suddenly turn into absolute anarchy.
Anarchy. Now promenade.
Yeah, unfortunately, other than elementary school, Mystery Science Theater is where I got most of my square dancing knowledge from as well. But
I mean, that's why. That's the thing, right? You now have a higher chance of being cool and not a square.
Yes, not a square.
I'm sorry. Was that a bad pun? I'm sorry, Lisa.
That was a good pun. I enjoyed it very much.
By the way, did you talk at all about what was her name? Judy Pioli Irvin, the writer of the part 2. I don't know much about her.
I was just about to bring her up.
Yeah, we've just.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Go for it. Yeah.
She has written a lot of our favorite episodes. She wrote Debutante Ball, which is an excellent episode. She wrote Lenny's Crush. She co-wrote several other really, really great episodes, and she also appeared on screen as the wonderful Terry Buttafuoco. So,
cool!
Awesome. We love her.
Do you think she brought a female perspective to this shotgun wedding scenario? Do you think?
Definitely. Well, it's I'll let Lisa say more about this because I think she's studied a lot more about this for the top 5 for season 2. Yeah. But my understanding was that because Judy, I think, was on as in the writing staff like since season 1, basically.
No, she was hired around season 2 or 3. Season 2.
Okay, season 2 or 3. Okay, I'm getting mixed up with Paula Roth again.
Paula Roth.
This keeps happening.
Yeah, that was Paula Roth. Go ahead.
Does
Go
it?
for it.
Does the system work the same way on Happy Days, where sometimes people get script writing credits, but then they just get all these different titles like creative consultant and like script consultant and executive producer, and they get all these names other than calling them writers because they don't want to admit that there's like a writer's room, I guess. So they have to pretend like all these people have consultant or producer in their name.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, that happened a lot.
On the Vern show, it's a bigger mess because everyone was always fighting the writing staff. And people were always getting fired, and people were always getting rehired. And the actors were always fighting with the writers, and the writers were always fighting with the actors. In Laverne Shirley's case, since Chris was just bringing this up, there were only 2 women in the writer's room going through about, I'd say, somewhere in season 2, and they hired Judy Pioli. One was Paul Roth, and one was Deborah Leshin. And that their male colleagues were constantly asking them, get up to get them coffee and junk. So the 2 of them got T-shirts that said "Girl Writers" on it, so that people would stop doing that to them. So that happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I know on Happy Days, Fred Fox Jr., the person who wrote part 1, he was given all kinds of jobs. He was called story consultant, story editor, supervising producer. Did they ever give Judy a job title, you think?
I can't remember. I'm pretty sure. Didn't she become a script supervisor somewhere around season 6, Chris? I'm trying to remember.
That is correct. Well, okay, so the title is story editor from 77 to 78, executive story editor from 78 to 79, and executive story consultant for 1979, which is when she basically, because it looks like season 5 was her last year doing that before she would actually just write scripts, because she would continue writing on the show off and on, kind of like a couple in season 7, one in season 6, and then one for season 8. So it's kind of so I think she started to phase out a little bit, to go get other gigs, I think is part of it.
So with a guy like Fred Fox Jr., even though he's not necessarily credited as a writer on every single episode, I just assume he's in the room pitching ideas or fixing up scripts. So I wondered if it was the same way with Judy.
Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if that's how it went, because I know Michael McKean on Twitter has repeatedly said, well, versus people being credited as the writers of these episodes, this person put in a line, I made up this line, he's mentioned various things that got thrown into the pot. So it's probably run the same way, the writer's room.
Well, I don't know if things have even changed that much on TV, because I just saw the making of the Eric Andre show, which is about as far from Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley as you can get.
Yeah.
And they just had a very normal looking writer's room, and it was just a big table with people like pitching ideas. Mm-hmm. But almost no one was identified in the little making of documentary as writer. They all had like producer, executive consultant, and they all had all these job titles. So I think that's still the way television works.
Yeah.
Well, I know in South Park kind of had a similar situation when they did that 7 Days to Air documentary. I mean, they had like Bill Hader in there, and he's never credited as a writer, but he's coming up with jokes and ideas in the space with them.
Yeah.
So
he said, now Bill says he came up with a fish sticks joke. So he claims the Kanye West fish stick joke was his idea. So I don't think any of these people were, sometimes these people aren't credited as writers, but I think that's what they're basically there to do. I think they're basically there to be in the room and pitch ideas and stuff. So that's what I thought Fred Fox Jr. did. So even though he's not writing every single episode, I just think he's part of the creative team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that does seem to have happened from what I'm starting to understand. But a lot of it, I will say, most of what it comes down to with the writing process is a lot of it's conjecture. Because even for instance, we got sort of confirmation recently, or at the very least, the implication that when they would do shoots, David Lander and Michael McKean would basically go to the writers' room after shooting and punch up the jokes for Lenny and Squiggy, because that was their way of protecting the characters.
Yeah, because they were the ones who created Lenny and Squiggy, and they were the ones who perfected them in like comedy shows and stuff. And they were the ones who basically just got hired to be on Laverne and Shirley as these characters that they created. Yeah.
There's some interesting stuff about that. First of all, because they ended up signing a contract with Paramount, they had to actually go back in and get the rights to the characters back so they could perform them elsewhere after the show. And the other thing I was going to say is that at some point, the both of them were kind of quasi-banned from the writer's room because they kept coming in to do this stuff. And they were hired as writers originally.
Well, yeah. Sometimes people, Michael was on Saturday Night Live, and that's a show that's infamous for hiring people supposedly as performers, but kind of expecting them to write too, even if they don't get credited as writers. So
his experience on that show was super interesting, by the way he's talked about it. And he said, well, I met a lot of interesting people, and the stuff I did manage to get on air was good, but on the other hand, you kept on getting called in to go play David Spade's dad, basically, in sketches, and he kept on. Sorry.
If we got nothing from his time on Saturday Night Live other than him portraying Elvis Costello,
yes.
I think it's the only time we've ever get to see Michael McKean's Elvis Costello impression, which is great.
It is. He loves Elvis Costello.
So I was glad that he got that on the air somewhere. So it wasn't a total loss. It wasn't, and he plays Lenny at least twice.
Yes, he does. In the wonderful Welcome Back, Kotter Pulp Fiction sketch, which Chris loves.
Yeah, it's a great sketch.
You're gonna die.
I mean, I'm a nerd enough that I can even.
Sorry.
It's okay. It just always, I love bringing up that I was enough of a Tarantino nerd as a teenager that I can even recognize they got some of the guns right, that they used the Smith & Wesson has semi-automatic that was used in both Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction quite a bit. Yeah. That was even one of the guns that I think it's the one that Lenny pulls out, and it's like, yes, this is.
And then he bites it.
So it's like, okay.
And he also gets to be Lenny. He also gets to be Lenny in the sketch where Phil Hartman is saying his goodbye.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
That's very sweet. So the goodbye sketch, I think Michael's line is something like, "So long, farewell. I have to get up early. I don't have a character yet, but I was on Laverne and Shirley," and he's dressed up as Lenny, and then he dances off.
Yep.
So it wasn't a total loss.
I remember him specifically talking about being asked to play Bill Clinton. And he's sitting there in the chair, and he looks over at Lauren and goes, we can just fucking take the sketch off before we actually go on screen. He was not confident in his Clinton. He did not want to play Clinton. He said something to that General Mien is what he said. He did not want to be Clinton, and thought his impression was blah.
I forgot who. I guess Daryl Hammond would have been playing Clinton at that time.
Yeah,
somebody.
He came between Phil Hartman, I think it was Phil Hartman, and Daryl Hammond did playing Clinton, and it was not an enviable position, basically.
No.
He did not like it.
Anyway, so getting things back onto I wanted to get things back into the episode a bit because
it's okay.
I'm going back through my notes, and there was actually a question that I had for y'all about from a Happy Days perspective. So Laverne and Shirley does pretty much everything on soundstage. And I remember Happy Days, as the years went on, they did a lot more location shooting. They would do more exteriors, farms. And this is obviously with Shotgun Wedding is quite a bit. Was this specifically during this time where they just doing more in general? Or was this still kind of rare for them to actually do the shoots on the farm as an example?
Well, they do that for big events. They tend to do that at the beginnings of seasons. At the beginning of season 5, they took the cast on. Heck, at the beginning of season 4, they took the cast on location. At the beginning of season 5, they took the cast on location. At the beginning of season 6, they took the cast on location. They will use location footage in odd ways. Sometimes they'll take the cast actually down to the real Happy Days house, for instance, on Cahuenga in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. Not that it's far from Happy Days from Paramount, but they'll take them down there to do a really nothing scene. They'll bring them down there to have them walk from the car to the front door.
Right, because I'm assuming because they figure they could just reuse it, constantly and just loop over dialogue as needed.
Well, sometimes, but there's one scene where they're just all waiting on the porch to be let in to the house, and they actually went to the house to film it, and I was like, that was probably a waste of half a day to take the cast and crew down there to film this stupid scene where they're waiting on the porch to get in. But ABC, I think, does count every penny because after Westward Ho, which was a very elaborate 3-part episode filmed out on the Paramount Ranch. They did the cheapest episode I think I've ever seen, which was Fonzie's blindness, which is an episode so cheap, we don't actually see a doctor's office or a doctor. Or an exterior of anything. There's no guest stars. There's no exteriors, and they did that very soon after Westward Ho. And I thought, oh, this was payback from the accountants at ABC. I thought like do the cheapest possible episode that you can do, and that's why I think that really stood out to me when I watched that Fonzie's blindness episode, was how cheap it looked, and I think it was because they'd spent all their money on Westward Ho.
Man, that's wild. Speaking of Fonzie, another question I had to want to make sure was, we always have this imagining, right, of Fonzie being cool. Everything's cool. He never gets hot under the collar in any sort of circumstances. He might get a little angry, but then there's a snap and he's cool.
Right.
I love how terrified he looks when the girls are trying to take care of them and realizing, oh my God, Shirley's going to kill me. And I was curious, is this normal for Fonz? Just once in a while when there's an escalating circumstance.
Now, Peter, you like to talk about Fonzie's melodramatic side, so
Yeah. The thing is that Fonzie, he likes to act like being cool is effortless for him, but it's not. He puts a lot of effort into it. He puts a lot of stock into making sure that he has everything he needs to be seen as cool. His motorcycle, his jacket, his hair, his job as a mechanic. But as time has gone on, we have seen that Fonzie is just kind of a melodramatic disaster who will go off on the slightest thing.
Yeah, Fonzie tends to react very, very big to things. And there's one episode that I don't think either Peter or I really liked, called Rules to Date By. That's the one where they go to the bar, the lumberjack bar in Wisconsin. But
that's the one where Richie is a pissy little baby because Lori Beth has interactions with men who are not him.
God.
But in that same episode, the thing that I actually liked about it is all through it, Fonzie is very paranoid and very wired, and he is like freaking out, and he needs to like just get out of town and get to somewhere like more out in nature because he's freaking out in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee. And there's no explanation for it. It's never explained why he's acting like this. He's just very, very tense. Like he's had like 100 cups of coffee in a row. And that's shows you kind of what a more complex character Fonzie is beyond just being cool. He's a roiling mass of emotions underneath that cool exterior, and he will go to pieces over pretty much anything.
He really, really will.
I'm really kind of glad to hear about this, because one of the things I really got out of this two-parter was seeing the dynamic between Richie and Fonz and kind of their different personalities, because as in watching Laverne and Shirley and seeing how that dynamic works about, and especially the complexities of Laverne and Shirley and how those work, and hearing about these ideas of, Fonz he seems really cool, but there's layers to him and stresses and insecurities. And Richie also has his own, he's lacks confidence, but is very capable, and especially here, he's more confident, as he's older. So that was what I really appreciated getting to see here, was to witness that and see the comparison of the two pairs, basically.
Yeah, I as we've been talking about this episode, I was thinking about the road movies, the road comedies. I don't know if anyone else has seen any of them. And if this is basically a road comedy, who's Hope and who's Crosby in this team? I don't know. I guess Fonzie is Crosby. I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels like it's interchangeable.
Yeah,
it is. It depends. It depends on the situation.
It does depend, because they both have traits of both characters. But this definitely feels like one of the things about the road comedies is that even though there's a series of them, they're self-contained, and they basically start over again with each new one. And this definitely feels like a self-contained adventure. That I don't know if Richie or Fonzie is ever going to mention again.
I think they would probably prefer not to.
Probably not to. And
Yeah.
the other thing that I thought was sad about this, though, was that supposedly, as for Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley crossovers, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the end. So I guess I don't know if these did well in the.
Is Fonzie's funeral after this one or before?
It was before.
Okay,
It's before. So you see, we're at a loss here because we're skipping forward one season. So I don't know if this did badly in the ratings or did well in the ratings or underwhelmed maybe, but apparently somebody decided no more crossover.
Yeah.
Except for
I'm wondering if it could be because of the California move, is my suspicion.
Oh yeah.
And then they moved.
Yeah, and Lisa,
They moved forward like 3 or 4 years, so they're in 2 totally different time periods. So.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's definitely.
They end up in 1967 eventually, don't they? Isn't that the last season? Is 1967.
Yep, last season is in 1967, on the very verge of 1968, because the last episode, block your ears, Chris. In the final episode, Carmine auditions to be on off-Broadway for Hair. So, yeah.
Yeah, wasn't that a backdoor pilot for a Carmine series?
Yes. That is the last episode of the show. Is a backdoor pilot for a Carmine series, and that's how the show ends.
And I still my tongue right there.
You're gonna be in agony by the time we get there. I don't know what we're gonna get.
It's cool. It's all cool. So Lisa, though, I did actually have another follow-up kind of question. Was sort of that's from the Happy Days perspective, seeing that comparison and seeing the Fonzie Richie dynamic. And Lisa, I was curious, because I'm assuming it might have been a while since you've watched both parts of the two-parter back to back. If you had a takeaway of seeing the way the dynamics interacted, especially because we actually haven't seen this particular 4 all together, I think, since the first time Laverne and Shirley were introduced, right?
We haven't seen Fonzie and Richie and Laverne and Shirley since Football Frolics, I want to say.
Okay.
On Happy Days. Because it's Bachelor Party. No. It is it's Bachelor Mothers. No, wait. Richie's not in Bachelor Mothers.
Yeah, my Bachelor Mothers had Bachelor Mothers had Fonzie, and excuse me, Meg couldn't have Richie. So it was like they were separated.
I'm right, Football Frolics. I'm correct in the first place.
Football Frolics could have used more Laverne and Shirley.
Yeah.
Football Frolics needed more Laverne and Shirley. So
a lot of things could use a lot more Laverne and Shirley. Even Laverne and Shirley could have used more Laverne and Shirley.
By the end of the show, heck yeah.
Well, I guess, the Laverne and Shirley in the Army meets the Fonz. I guess, they eventually, their paths do eventually collide again in the animated show.
But it does. That's like saying something from Droids is canon. Come on, man.
Droids is canon, isn't it?
Mr. Cool is canon, damn it. Mr. Cool.
I don't think it is canon. I think it stopped being canon with the expanded universe. I think because of the new Disney movies.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Disney.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
But it definitely used to be canon. It definitely used to be canon.
You're right.
Yeah.
Disney said
God,
no to a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, doesn't that mean the Ewoks movies got nuked from the timeline as well? Fudge.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks. I love those movies. Anyway, but so back to the question though for Lisa was the thought, like, what did you get out of seeing the dynamic interacting of the 4 of them here?
I really enjoy it. I especially like the chemistry between Penny and Henry. It's really solid in this particular episode because they're having fun playing off of each other. And as always, the Ron and Cindy chemistry is adorable. It's real adorable.
Yeah. And I will say that I really loved the fact that Fonzie and Richie were basically the damsels in distress all throughout part 2. With,
God, yes.
With Laverne and Shirley being the ones who had to get into a square dance fight to save them.
That's great.
So that was very enjoyable. And I will say that it adds to my belief that if the cast of Happy Days and the cast of Laverne and Shirley were each in a zombie apocalypse, the cast of Laverne and Shirley would be way better at surviving.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Chris has his theories about this.
Come on, Carmine's is connected. He's in with members of the mob. He's gonna get them guns. He's gonna get them supplies. He's fine.
Yeah.
He's fine.
By the way, I want to point out that Cindy is such a delight in these two episodes. One of the things that I like that she is that first off, trying to be a perfect nurse.
Yes.
And she's trying to basically be a Girl Scout to Richie and Fonzie. Yeah. And then in the second half, sort of being like the most politically correct person in there, and like trying to prevent them from hunting and fishing. I thought that was great.
It was so charming. Yes. Although, would that have been anachronistic? Like, would it have, like, would someone in the very early 60s have felt that way?
I don't think so. I think she was,
she was ahead of her time. She was ahead of her time.
Maybe like
But it's because it's a thing. It's a recurring thing with Shirley about her love of animals. I mean, horse show, dog show. The dog show episode actually gets referenced in another few episodes from now, and that whole like. It's a really adorable way of like kind of zeroing in on this one, part of her. I mean, that love the line, my killers. All my friends are killers. It's an amazing moment. And to that note, but it was my last point to mention about Shirley real quick is speaking about her being a nurse. They actually have in the previously on piece when it comes into part 2 of Shotgun Wedding, they actually call them Angels of Mercy, which is a great nod to season 2, episode 2, I think.
Yes. Season 2, episode 2, Angels of Mercy. The girls have actual nursing experience, which you wouldn't believe from this episode. They were candy stripers.
Well, it's admittedly that experience was mostly involving them versus an unconscious man and a bed sheet. So
pretty much.
And something that I did appreciate is that even though like it's not ideal nursing, like they still stopped to help Richie and Fonzie when they were injured, even if Shirley apparently thought that they were an actual cow.
I love that line. When Laverne screams, "You thought they were a cow! You were mooing at them!" Stop because he thought it was a wounded cow.
Well, Farmer Bumperguard is fooled by the cow costume.
True.
He's like, "Oh, look at that funny-looking cow." I was like, "You're fooled? This is your job."
I know. Just imagine.
You're fooled by this Party City cow costume? Okay.
I mean, I'm surprised the dude hasn't blown his own foot off with that shotgun with how much of a freaking idiot he is.
Oh, okay. I want to ask you this. Had, I think Dukes of Hazzard had been on for a little while, maybe for a few months before this aired. Is it possible that the girls' outfits were inspired by Daisy Duke?
Absolutely. Yeah, I figured it'd have to, because it had been, Dukes of Hazzard had been around for about a year, it looks like at that point. So, it was probably starting to heat up the ratings. And actually now I've just looked it up on IMDb, looked at the picture of Daisy. Yep.
Helga
that outfit.
Helga definitely just straight up dresses like her. And I don't know if this is an idea, if this was like Happy Days chasing the new hotness, like, like we're old and busted and they're the new hotness. So let's copy what they're doing. So let's do a Dukes of Hazzard-y type episode.
Yeah, possibly.
Yep. Goodness.
I was gonna mention that it's quite possible they tried to do that because around this point in time, I think it was getting close to the big contract dispute that happened on Dukes of Hazzard. They would have been in the press. They would have gone, let's get some attention on this by doing that. But it didn't work. It really didn't work as we just went over. So kind of a negligible success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of sad when a show, you're the new hot thing for a few years, and then somebody else comes along, and now you're kind of having to catch up with the trends rather than being the trend. Yeah. And I think that happens to every show. Yeah. And well, as we go into the 1980s, the real new hotness is not going to be sitcoms at all. It's going to be action shows and primetime soap operas. So
And that's how you get stuff like Fonzie having a karate fight with Tom Hanks.
Oh my! What?
I love that episode.
Oh yeah.
What?
Yeah, and it's actually basically just a remake of A Mind of His Own with Fonzie's new girlfriend in the role of Richie in that episode.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Yeah, I remember all of this. I remember every last bit of it.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's just like what happened to Laverne and Shirley is that ultimately they were slaughtered by the A-Team. They were put up against the A-Team and they got flattened.
Well, there you go. You see, it's those action shows. It was like, A-Team, Magnum PI,
Knight Rider.
Knight Rider. That was what was happening in the 80s. The kids were watching that stuff, and the adults were watching Dallas and Dynasty and Falcon Crest, and nobody had time for the old sitcoms anymore, and so, well,
I mean, I was about to say that my parents watched some of those action shows at that time, and then I realized, oh right, they were kids back then.
Well, yeah, you had to watch that stuff if you're going to go to the playground the next day. What were you going to talk about? You're gonna, did you see Airwolf?
Well, I mean, I'm saying relatively kids, because I was born in '86, and so it's like, so they would have been, my mom was around like her late 20s, my dad was like 24 or so, but yeah, so it's like, it's just the funny thought of what we. I don't know. I'm over explaining my stupid joke.
No,
you're not.
No, but it's just that. Happy Days, time passed it by a little bit. Maybe this is some of the first signs that maybe time is passing these shows by a little bit.
I also would say, the clues of that also come from like the weird anachronisms where they're like trying to find like, the things of the time, because it's like, well, nobody really cares about the past anymore. They want what's current. Yeah. And when you get to Laverne and Shirley, like season 4, you start seeing that starting to hit as well. And it's very, it just kind of gets worse and worse until like, okay, these outfits, like, I know you're trying to go for like the go-go look, but you're really just doing disco flavored go-go look.
Yeah. And over in Happy Days, we get Flip Phillips, played by Eddie Warlock, who has a penchant for crop tops that probably wasn't actually a thing in the 1960s.
No, absolutely. Billy.
Wait, he was on that?
Yeah, Billy Warlock from Society.
Society and Baywatch.
Thank you for saying that. It was finally not me this time that brought up Society. Thank you. That's a fourth reference time.
I wrote a long article about Society for some website somewhere.
This is the fourth time it's been brought up on After Night. It just makes me so happy I wasn't the only one that brought it up. That's amazing.
But and then they have a character, Roger, who's basically a 1980s style yuppie, and he is seen wearing like spandex biker shorts and stuff like that, and none of that would have been available at all. But a story like this one, like Shotgun Wedding, it doesn't need to take place in the 50s or 60s. It doesn't need to take place in any particular time. It just basically is has nothing to do with nostalgia, really. Just like Westward Ho from last season, from season 6 of Happy Days, had nothing to do with nostalgia. They just kind of gave up on the nostalgia angle altogether.
Mm-hmm.
That start with Laverne and Shirley. It starts happening right around the California era. Even though we're trying to do the mod era, we're trying to do Go-Go Boots and the Beatles and all this stuff. Everybody has huge, wide disco lapels. And it's so noticeable. It's so noticeable. In fact, even Carmine, Chris, next episode we're doing, look at Carmine's collar and how wide it is. And you will see those disco lapels on him.
Oh.
Yeah. And by season 8, Penny has a shag haircut that is not from the era appropriate, and it becomes a mess.
Like a Tennille haircut.
She has the Tony Tennille look going. So, they're starting. It's starting to fade away here. Yeah. I think this was season 7 of Happy Days. This was the last season for Potsy and Ralph, and I think it's notable that they're not in this at all. I don't even think that they're in that big packing scene at the beginning of part 1 where everybody walks down the stairs in single file.
Yeah,
the audience goes wild.
Including Chachi.
Yeah.
By the way, do you think any of this was shot in front of a studio audience? They don't say studio audience.
I think they shot that one scene in the house and then they were done.
Yeah. Like the rest of it seems to have all been shot on some kind of location.
Yeah, I don't know. No one says this episode was shot in front of a live studio audience, so I'm just assuming it wasn't. But
It wasn't.
Yeah, it's possible. There's some decent realistic laughter during the medic scene in the house.
yeah,
but,
yeah.
like,
It's great.
Maybe that's the crew. I don't know. Maybe they get the crew to laugh.
maybe, but but you're right though. Like in the case of say some of the bits in the barn, in the loft, and everything. And part of that could also just be the crane rig they used for that was pretty big.
Yeah.
I don't know how big the stage was for what they were using.
So yeah. Whenever they don't say, occasionally there'll be an episode of Happy Days where they don't say live and shot. This episode was filmed in front of a studio audience. Whenever they don't say it, I just assumed that there was no audience there. Although the studio audience is definitely there in the later seasons of the show, because there are some very awkward episodes of Happy Days where the studio audience doesn't laugh at jokes. Like they will have, they'll have jokes that bomb in the studio, and I was like, well, at least they're keeping the show honest. Like they didn't put in laughs for that, but you can hear like the actors like really trying to sell these jokes and really trying to get the audience into it, and sometimes the audience is just not having it. Like the episode when Fonzie moves out of the Cunningham house, the audience just was not on board for that, and so it's an icy silence that they get sometimes for some of these jokes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's very sad and awkward.
Yeah. And I felt bad for the actors because, like, wow, they're giving it everything they got out there, but the audience isn't giving them anything back. But and this, you know, I think some of those scenes you couldn't have had an audience there for.
Yeah.
You know, like Richie running across the cow pasture or whatever he's.
Right.
Yeah.
The best they could do with that is like shoot that first and then do the Monty Python thing where they play it back for an audience and record the laughter from that crowd. Because I know that early Monty Python used to do that.
Yeah, that was their technique. As showing it on the monitors, I guess, to the studio audience so that you'd get at least some realistic laugh.
I was going to mention there is a great example of an audience rebelling against what they're seeing in Laverne and Shirley. One heck of a note, Carmine and Laverne kind of spark up this illicit affair between the two of them.
What?
And they kiss.
What?
Yes, this happens. This
is why I went a little crazy a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, Peter. That's what that was about.
Yeah. They kiss and the audience gasps in utter horror repeatedly. As this plays out. They are so not here for it, to the point where when Laverne and Carmine look at each other and go, "I don't love you," they applaud. It's that much of a negative reaction. They rejected it so wholeheartedly.
I would not have been down for that. I would not have approved of that at all.
Yeah. We don't either.
Yeah. That's bizarre.
I'm so glad we all agree on this.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I just noticed this. We were talking about the show being set in a particular time period, and I said it could have happened anytime.
Yes.
There is one dead giveaway that this show of this show's setting in time. The one reference that they make that sets the show in a very particular time and place, or time in history, and that's when they mention who the president of the United States is.
Yeah.
Hey, there you go.
There you go.
They mention
What is it?
John F. Kennedy. They say.
Yep.
I don't know why they mention. I think maybe Richie mentions him. John F. Kennedy is the president.
Fonzie does it when he's trying to convince Richie to go and to join him in trying to get laid, because you know that's the kind of thing that President Kennedy could get behind.
That is.
They don't say that, but I imagine that that's the line of logic.
Yeah.
That's such a strange thing, because for some reason Richie sings the Battle Hymn of the Republic under Fonzie's little speech, and I was like, why is he trying to sell himself on this? Isn't Fonzie trying to sell him on it? Why is Richie helping out with this?
I love that little moment. Like,
it is fun.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite moments.
Fonzie and Richie are extremely different in many ways, but they can be on the same wavelength sometime, and it's very endearing.
Yeah.
That's a really.
Enjoyable.
Well, that's why I think mainly this episode was to do a wacky Fonzie Richie adventure, and that's what we get. We definitely get it. So
And we finally get to have, and I guess with season 5, the girls finally get to at least have a wedding scene, even if it's like cut off at the I do, which you know we've been kind of waiting for them to hit that point. I mean, aside from that, was there was Comedy Odyssey, and Falls at the Altar doesn't even get to the point of wedding dress, right?
It does not. It does not. Yeah. And Laverne gets proposed to, of course, and Look Before You Leap. There are going to be multiple near weddings and finally a successful wedding from season 5 to season 8. So we'll get more of that coming up.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's very much something to look forward to. By the way, I did try to find what Fernan Constitution meant. And I could not find anything. It does not mean anything in Swedish. It certainly does not mean it's curtains for you. I spent an embarrassingly long time yelling into Google Translate. Fernan Constitution. Fernan Constitution.
They were banking on the fact that nobody at the time would have access to instantaneous language translation. Yeah. And also, hopefully, would not have any knowledge of Swedish.
I guess not. I've heard.
Well, also, it was also the time of the Swedish Chef in Bork Bork, so you know.
Well, I have heard that Swedish people in Sweden were not amused by the Swedish Chef at all, and were taken aback
because he sounds more Norwegian to them.
So they're anti-Swedish Chef. So.
Learn something new every day.
I guess another thing that sets it sort of in a time period, although not the time period of the 50s or 60s, is that when Laverne is acting as a nurse, she suddenly starts talking like somebody out of a World War II movie. She starts saying she calls him a GI and says, "Do you want to write a letter home and tell him how well the war is going? Do you have any stock?"
So I have a theory about that. That the quote unquote bedside manner, that Laverne misinterprets it for playing doctor, and that she's played doctor with Fonzie before, is my theory.
Yeah. Well, that's basically canon.
She definitely seems to be setting up some sort of World War II themed porn scenario or something. She says "Oh, GI, do you have any nylon stockings or chocolate candy for me?" And I guess I don't know if that was actually true, that something that soldiers did was to pay, I guess, prostitutes in nylons and chocolates. I don't know if that actually ever happened, but that's certainly a cliche from World War II.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
it's probably at the point of print the legend at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah. So speaking also of memories and and things that kind of little snapshots of time, and of that matter, I love the whole gimmick of Laverne with the camera in this episode.
It's so charming.
It is. And I love how everybody smiles. Even Richie's in the middle of panic mode and he turns and smiles.
With a fish on his forehead because they couldn't find a cold compress.
Right.
Well, people think that people faking their happiness for Instagram and stuff is a new phenomenon, but it is not at all. This was totally about that. This was totally about creating these picture perfect photos from your vacation, even if the vacation is going badly. Everybody smiles.
Even if you almost had to marry your friends to save them from getting married to 2 other people, you were going to get a semi-happy wedding photo out of it.
Yeah, and if you're gonna suffer, you might as well get the picture.
But before I forget though, if unless we're gonna unless we're still on the photo thing, does anybody have a favorite moment that they stopped and took a picture
from this episode or what?
Yes.
Well, like I said, mine was Richie and the cold compress fish, and also the wedding photo at the end.
Lisa, do you have a favorite one?
Fonzie on the donkey. It's such a great
that was
visual.
Great. That was so great.
That's the best.
And like I said, that is. I love when he talked to the donkey and the donkey ignored him, and he said that.
Yeah.
And he got kind of weird about it.
Yeah.
Because he really wants this donkey's approval.
Yeah. Everybody loves the Fonz, including animals. Darn it.
I did not particularly. There was not any particular moments. Although I must have. I don't know if you follow the Twitter account, if I posted any screenshots from this episode. I don't remember if I did or I didn't. I can't remember now.
You did.
What
you
was?
Posted the 2 bulls. The bowl comparison
Oh,
shot.
yes, I did. I did that. So I guess that was the image that I wanted to see if it was the same bull. I don't know. I wanted to see if they had, like a year later, they found the same bull, because Fonzie had a dog and they had the dog played by two different dogs. And so I wondered, is the bull, did they get the same bull? They didn't. It's a very different looking bull. The bull in the Westward Ho one looks really mean. But the bull in the Westward Ho episodes looks pretty intense.
And this bull seems like a perfectly nice one who just wanted to meet a nice cow.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been through a lot. It had, some relationship troubles, and it needs a comfort relationship right now. It just needs something kind of easy, kind of casual. It needs to just go for long walks along the paddock, and someone who could to enjoy grass with, have we all not been there in some way or another?
Everybody needs love. Everybody's looking for love.
Am I being too picky to point out that the wigwams are actually teepees and not wigwams at all?
No, you're not, because that's accurate.
Yeah, I mean it's accurate, and B, it's also like that's very this show that they will do those things that they. I
guess the point of it is that a Native American culture was not only appropriated but marketed to white people in a lot of different ways, and like campgrounds and like summer camps and stuff.
Mm-hmm,
Yep. I could remember specifically a sort of motel on Route 66 that has those kind of structures where you can still stay. You can still go there and stay.
I wonder if any of that stuff is still out there. Is any of that?
Yeah. You can stay at that motel. You can still stay at that motel.
Yeah, and I just saw someone on Twitter talking about a museum of Native American art in, I think it's Durango, and it's owned by white people, and the sign they use is used to be this restaurant called belonged to this restaurant called the Chief Diner, and it's this image of this big Native American guy just kind of posing. Okay. So, yeah, this stuff is still out there, and it's not great.
Yeah, that was a big thing for kids' summer camps too, was to have sort of pseudo-authentic Indian style names was a big thing.
Oh God, yeah.
We all grew up with that.
What is the full name? What is the full name of this place where they stay? This campground? It's like somebody.
Roscoe's Wigwams.
Roscoe's Wigwams. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So, so maybe they're playing up the inauthenticity of it.
Yeah,
I assume so. I assume that's. I mean, they look in not great shape. Oh, and what am I saying? There's the whole joke of, what is it? I can't sleep in an actual buffalo, and don't think you have to worry. It's made in Taiwan.
Yeah.
And then, oh God, and then Shirley's line after that. I don't know if anybody has that one written down.
Oh, that about Taiwanese Indians.
Oh, it's the same place as our toaster.
The Taiwan Indians made our toaster.
Yeah, they're the ones who made our toaster.
Yeah.
By the way, I had to point this out as well. Tupperware is not sold door to door that I know of. I can't find any evidence that a Tupperware was originally a flop. The guy Earl Tupper invented Tupperware, and he couldn't sell it until he came up with the idea of these Tupperware parties.
Yeah. He basically didn't he basically invent the MLM?
Yeah, basically he did, and it's a model that people, I guess, are not using in 2021 or 2020. But
no. But I mean, MLMs are still out there, but I think Tupperware parties specifically aren't.
Yeah. Tupperware parties not so much, but I mean,
I think we've all had that Facebook friend who has reached out to us and tried to get us to sell like knives or something.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, totally have had that.
So I don't know. There was some sort of randy Tupperware salesman who came to the Bumpergard farm, and they wish another one would show up. I guess.
Yeah.
They say they
Either that, or what they knew, the girls ordered away for the Tupperware. They ordered the Tupperware knowing a salesman was going to come there. Like, it's like, and like this is a thing to woo, get a guy onto the property. Yeah. And it's like, oh no, father, he's just a Tupperware salesman. And then,
and then he murders them, and then the father murders the Tupperware salesman.
Well, no.
I mean, when it gets to the point, when it gets to the forced wedding at the end, I was seeing the whole thing through the lens of Rob Zombie movies at that point. So
well, you just mentioned
completely on point.
Well, you just mentioned the Rob Zombie movies, but I'm thinking of the Tales from the Crypt episode with Tim Curry and Ed Begley Jr.
Yeah.
So that has a shotgun wedding in it.
Yep.
Although
oh man,
that's an intense episode. It's pretty awesome. I think people should probably see that one. I think it's called Death of Another Salesman.
Death of Another Salesman. Yeah, it's a hard one to track down because I know the Tales from the Crypt episodes are kind of scattered all over the place, and they're not even on HBO Max. It boggles me. Yeah, but yeah, no, totally. That's another great one.
Yeah.
So
I actually had 2 questions for the room. 2 questions. How long do you think Lenny and Squiggy lasted with those daughters before they got shot at?
Well, good question. Okay. I'm gonna think on that. I'll let our guests answer for a sec because I want to think my answer through.
Wow, that is a poser because I don't know. Under normal circumstances, I think they would last about 40 to 45 seconds. Yeah. But under these circumstances, I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. I think that Lenny and Squiggy might have some virtues as lovers, but I don't think stamina is necessarily one of those virtues.
That's a good answer.
So I don't know. Who knows? Well,
I would not kick Michael McKean or David Lander out of bed, but also I don't think that Lenny and Squiggy would last very long in most circumstances.
Right. And that's a term of sexual lasting power. To me, what would possibly happen if that the girls are very much in the, they want the rodeo do or rodeo do, as it were, given the location, but I can see their intensity terrifying the two of them. And that would be the thing, as in like, once the clothes start coming off, like they're like, yeah, this is great, this is fine. And then like Helga picking Squiggy up as an example, and him feeling like that sense of emasculation, scaring the shit out of him. That's what I would say. I want
it noted that this question started instantly with how long the relationship would last after the father shot him. I want it noted that I started this with an innocent question.
I guess when this could have been a bumper garden spinoff. A backdoor pilot for the Bumper Guard family. What's happening? What happens to them next week? Because the dad is learning to become a more forgiving, more open father. He's he's taken parenting lessons from Mr. C, I guess.
And you call the last episode "Late Spring" as the two girls get married off.
Yeah. So I appreciate what they're going for, but I feel like that would have worked better if the girls if the daughters felt more like characters, because as it is, I feel like Helga and Inga are very thinly written, almost caricatured in a way.
Yeah, they don't really.
I don't feel like I know. I wasn't really as moved as I could have been.
That was the exact word I was gonna use.
Yeah.
I will say that I was slightly moved by it because I'm going to be moved by any story about a father who realizes, okay, I haven't been being a good parent. I'm going to do better in the future for the sake of my children. Anytime that is a theme in a story, I am going to like it.
Yeah.
But it comes into this story kind of so late. And you don't really... Helga and Inga don't really seem like human beings who would actually have complex feelings about these issues. They very much.
But hey, maybe Helga's going to get off the farm and go become a dancer, like she seems to kind of want, I assume.
I guess.
She's going to steal Carmine's role in Hair.
Oh, I thought you were going to say she's going to steal his role in Blansky's Beauties, but that was Carmine's.
His cousin never exist again.
They could become Blansky's beauties.
Yeah.
They could.
Yeah,
They
there you
could
go.
become Blansky's beauties.
Yeah, I before I getting too much off of it, I guess it's to sum up what I feel about them as well, to agree with it, is I like, this is going to sound weird, but if I'm going to have cheesecake, I like there to be a little brain on top there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know that there's that much substance to them. I don't think there's really any substance to them. In fact, given kind of the accents kind of get in the way too, because they've been given these very stereotypical accents.
Yeah, yeah, and that only kind of serves to further other them. It's kind of the same way. Like it's also the same way I feel about Arkansas in Blansky's Beauties. Like the reason you are giving her, the reason why you are making sure this character has this incredibly exaggerated accent is so that the audience knows that they are not human.
Yeah.
Right. Like Linda Goodfriend talks like a person on that show. And, Arkansas Bates. Oh, good Christ. Oh, that character.
Yeah, and maybe to an extent that...
tall man.
Yeah, and maybe to an extent that's also true of Pat Morita as Arnold. As Arnold. Like, he has an accent that, Pat Morita does not actually have. And given that he's Happy Days' first major recurring character of color, it can be kind of uncomfortable in an orientalizing kind of way.
Pat came.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Pat came up with that accent. Pat devised that accent himself. I mean, Pat didn't talk that way at all, as you say. He didn't talk like that at all in real life. But it was an accent that he used in his stand-up act, and I guess he said he based it on real people. I don't know.
Yeah. So.
That's a great, speaking as someone who is a person of color myself. Yeah, I mean, I'm mixed, but my father is from Sri Lanka. That's the weird gray area that you find when talking to folks about that, is where, because it's like they're doing it, but they're also furthering a stereotype. And so that's where it gets a little wiggly.
Yeah. So when you're a person of color in a white dominated industry and you're playing to an audience of primarily white people, and all of the gatekeepers are white people, like, it's gonna... There's always going to be these weird, uncomfortable compromises, and I don't blame Pat Morita for any of it. He's doing what... He did what he had to do. Yeah. But then again, I'm white, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
But, I will say, to piggyback off that, it kind of speaks to one of the kind of greater issues of this format of television, of sitcoms and situational comedy. It's become so gag driven that we end up getting into these situations where people are just sort of filling the role of a joke dispensary. And like coming back to Helga and Inga, that's kind of the catch, is that they're there to be bimbos, to be funny, to be cute, and to be physically fit enough to do the dance and the fight scene. And that's that's the way that a lot of show business has worked. And in regards to, people say, oh, it's just entirely a race and gender thing. And it definitely is, part of it, but it's not entirely the thing, because, you watch a lot of Westerns, and even if it's a bunch of white guys as, duking it out over farm territory or something, it's the same thing. It's this person is this type of villain, this person is this type of hero. And so that's the element of cliche that sort of comes into it. And that's where, with these characters, I found them to be cute. It would have been great to have had them do more there. But as we've kind of stated, this is, as a two-parter, both these pieces together is very much trying to be a big show. And they're trying to give a big performance. Yeah,
I think Cindy and Penny were fortunate in that they were written as multidimensional people right from the start. Right from a date with Fonzie, we get to know them as people, and we get to see different sides of their personality and different sides of their relationship, how they're friends and also kind of enemies sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you and your friend have to fight in a bathroom over who gets to have sex with Henry Winkler.
And so they didn't have to transcend this just being joke delivery machines. And Arnold, over the course of the time that he's on there, he's really, at the beginning, he's only on there for one season. Yeah. by the end, by the time we get to the season finale, which is Arnold's wedding, I think we actually do care about him as a person. And he's, because we've had private discussions with him where characters come to him and talk about their problems occasionally. Because I think when Howard has a meltdown, doesn't he go to Arnold and talk about it a little bit? So, yeah, a character like Arnold has to overcome just being just a one-note stereotype joke. Yep. And Helga and Inga, they don't really have a chance because they're just there for this limited amount of time. But I think they come closer to being human beings than the father, Farmer Vernon Bumpergard.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as far as we know, they are not shooting people.
Yeah.
As far as we know.
Unless like this is like they're into this, they're into the idea of luring men to their farm and making out with them and then letting their dad murder them.
Oh yeah, there's a silo of bodies somewhere on it. There's like this there's this silo full of dead greasers that they have on the property.
So here's what I have to say to that is that the problem with the silo is that unless the containment's really good, the smell is gonna just cause it's gonna be a fly farm within a couple of weeks. Especially given it's out in the country. See, here's my theory about that. There is a lye pit somewhere and they just dissolve them.
Okay, that's what's happening to them because there's definitely human remains on this farm.
Do we want to talk about the tag for the first part?
Oh yeah.
So
let's do that.
So basically, Richie runs past Howard as he's fishing, and then Fonzie shows up and explains to Howard that he got out of it by calling Ralph and Potsy up and getting them to come and say they'd marry the farmer's daughters instead.
And that led to a spin-off where Ralph and Potsy married the farmer's daughters.
Yeah, and basically I think that part one on its own, like you have some fun stuff like the cow suit and the dance scene, but like without part two, I think that it comes across as really anticlimactic, and it makes Laverne and Shirley's appearance, like it's still nice to see them, but it is, it feels just kind of, like I said, anticlimactic. Yeah. And the first time I saw that episode, I wondered if Fonzie was going to have Fonzie was going to say that Ralph and Potsy pretended to be Laverne and Shirley to help get him out. But no, they just married the farmer's daughters. Or maybe they also got away somehow.
Yeah, they called two other guys that they know, and then it was an endless cycle of calling.
Okay, so now it just turns into The Ring. I'm very into this.
Or maybe the farmer's daughter, or maybe Helga and Inga took one look at Ralph and Potsy and decided, maybe we don't want to get married just yet.
Yeah.
They see Ralph and Potsy and they become nuns. They join the order.
Well, I want to know if you had seen the one episode version of this, the condensed one episode version in syndication for Happy Days, would you have been fooled? Would you have thought, that story wrapped up nicely and in an unexpected way? I don't think so. I would not have been tricked.
Yeah,
by that.
I would have been.
I have that on a piece of paper here. Just checking my notes, and no.
I would not have. I wonder if anyone watching Happy Days and reruns was fooled by that ending. I don't think so. I think you would have to be very, very gullible to buy that. Although I do like that they wrote in a nice little scene between Henry and Tom Bosley, where Tom is is trying to fish but not having any success, and Tom says he's going to throw the fish back, and Henry says, "Oh, that's why I love you," which I thought that was a great little moment. But no, I think otherwise that was a pretty cheap. That was a pretty cheap way of getting out of it. And if you were watching Laverne and Shirley just on its own in syndication, well, you were just.
No.
Well, I mean, you got all the narration at the beginning explaining everything, so you probably would have been fine.
I guess so.
You would have missed the cow suit, but you would have been fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would not have been satisfied with the narration recap of it. Do you think that's actually a good scene between Henry and Tom there at the end? Did you think it was a good scene? Did you think it was a funny scene?
I liked it.
I thought it was. It was cute.
I thought it was sweet.
I thought it was cute.
I thought it was sweet.
Yeah.
And that's for sure not Ron Howard running through that set.
No, it
they
isn't.
just got
I was going to mention that.
They just got some jerk to run through. They just got some crew member or something to do it. It could be
definitely.
They got maybe Scott Marshall or something. I don't know.
Yeah, they put spray paint the hair a little bit. Good to go.
You're a redhead now.
And
go.
Right.
I don't know. They seem to have built up a little set.
Yeah.
But it's not a great set, but it's an okay.
Yeah.
It's an okay set that they built up. You get the illusion of depth, with the painted backdrop.
Yeah. It's more or less serviceable.
Yeah.
It's serviceable.
Yeah.
It's serviceable.
It services the scene very well to the point of audience satisfaction.
Yeah, I guess if you're just watching Happy Days reruns, your standards aren't going to be that high for realism.
Yeah. Anyway,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lisa. Go ahead, Lisa.
I was going to say that it continues Laverne and Shirley's series-long continuation of never, ever, ever leaving the lot. They never, ever, 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 ever left the Paramount lot. Not even once.
Oh yeah, like the thing that to me is the most blatant is in season 8 of Laverne and Shirley when Laverne is doing the on her own, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Schlemiel, Schlemazel, Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated.
Oh yeah,
it's
right.
the frickin' Paramount lot right behind her. Like that just felt so cheap. Like what is is she working at Paramount or what's going on?
For me, it's when it's season 4. It's the festival. We're in Brooklyn.
Right, Brooklyn.
They took the Knapp Street and they turned it into Brooklyn, and it's so obvious. It's painfully obvious. It's the same. It's not the same lot. It's the same street they've been filming on for years.
Now, Happy Days in seasons 4, 5, and 6 did season opening 3-parters that I call like movie length adventures. Fonzie Loves Pinky, and then Hollywood, and then Westward Ho. Compared to all those, this feels noticeably cheaper.
Yeah.
This feels noticeably scaled back. There's way less outdoor stuff. You don't get things like Joni just disappears. They just send Joni off into the woods and they just don't even check on her. Like that's it for her.
What happened to Joni and those surveyors? That's my question. What happened to her?
Yeah, hopefully after Howard very loudly said that Joni was 16, they backed off. Hopefully.
God.
My almost 17-year-old. They put in that line about almost. But in those previous episodes, they would give the supporting characters stuff to do, and they would film them on location doing stuff. Like in Westward Ho, there's just like a really nice scene of Tom Bosley and Marion Ross just going horseback riding by a lake. Oh. And that was out on the Paramount Ranch. I forgot where that is, but that's not too far from Los Angeles. But they took them out to the Paramount Ranch, and they actually showed them riding around on horses. There was noticeably way less of that stuff in this. Yeah. So it's very much more set-driven. And in Shotgun Wedding, when they're outside, it's clearly like a set. So there's a few fleeting minutes of actual location footage, but not nearly as much as what we got in other episodes.
Yeah. With Laverne and Shirley, they went to Paramount Ranch, I think, once, and that was for You're in the Army Now, to do that outdoor battle where they're trying to learn how to pass basic training. I think that's the only time they ever make it off the lot, except for a few exteriors they shot at the actually extent exterior of Laurel Vista, which is an actual apartment building still.
Well, in the cartoon, they get to go into outer space. So,
they also have a sergeant named Sergeant Squealy. Ron.
Yeah, they get to. He goes with them, and I think they filmed that on location in outer space, which was very expensive.
It was the 80s. They were putting stuff in those cartoons all the time. Just keep throwing dollars at those things.
Clearly, Hanna-Barbera was. No expense was spared at that studio, but that was one of the main things I noticed about Shotgun Wedding is that compared to the previous movie-length adventure stories, which used to be 3 episodes, now it's been cut back to 2. This feels much smaller. So
it's within scale of Laverne Shirley's 2-parters. So far we've had like two-parters, and this is about as contained as they usually are. As Chris,
yeah, I don't know. It just felt a little. It felt a little smaller than what we're used to, and it feels like, oh, this is where the show starts to decline in the ratings, and you're starting to see.
Go
ahead.
I wonder if part of it is also about the allocation of funds and time, because, doing company moves is redonkulous. And here they're able to focus on the dance fight scene number, which, is an incredible amount of choreography to pull off. When from what I've heard from like Rafkin and Zwick, they were shooting these in about a week. They were essentially like starting rehearsals like sometimes on Monday and then taping Thursday.
Yeah.
So,
well, clearly this entire show is building up to that big set piece, and they try to make that look as good as it could. But imagine if they'd been able to film that outdoors. That would have been, I think, even cooler if they'd been able to film that outside, like in an actual farm. Imagine that.
Yeah, it would have been cool. I mean, I suspect it would have been, because depending on the timing, the always catch with doing exteriors is its time, it's sunlight, because you're able to get as many takes as you want indoors with all the prepped lighting. It's the Bava effect, as I like to call it.
Well, I don't know. I think for a thing like this, a story like this that is already a break from what the show normally does. I mean, we're taking these characters out of Milwaukee and putting them in a different situation. I think it behooves this material to film it in a different way as well, to not film it like really set bound. I personally would have liked to have seen more outdoorsy footage,
Oh yeah, no, I always love to see the outdoors, especially for this kind of. I mean, this is practically Hicksploitation, so it definitely, it's always great to have it in that sort of visual style.
Yeah.
But okay, so with that in mind, I mean, we've been going at this for a while.
Yeah.
I think it is time for us to move on to rankings.
Yes.
And so, Joe, if you'd like to start us off, given you've expressed opinion.
What am I?
Out of 10, 10 being perfect episode.
Oh, right. Am I rating these as one?
As like either or. You can decide, because it also depends on how much strongly you feel they work entirely as a single unit or as two independent episodes.
I am going to rank part one like a 6.5, and then part two a 7.
Cool. All right, that's cool, and many good reasons to as you've explained.
Just because they're fun episodes, they're a change of pace. I kind of like Hicksploitation movies. I kind of like the Beverly Hillbillies and that kind of, and Snuffy Smith and Lil Abner and stuff. So I don't mind doing that. I wouldn't want that every week from Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, but it's okay to do it for 1 week.
Yeah, indeed. All right, cool. So Peter, out of 10, and separate or combined, your choice.
Okay. Separately, I'd rate part 1 a 6. I'd rate part 2 an 8, and together I'd rate them a 7.5.
Nice. And Lisa?
I'm going to go with about 5.6 for the Happy Days half. I enjoy a lot of the fun that Richie and Fonzie have in that part of the episode. God, it's like a little too cheesy even for me, and I'm the Laverne and Shirley fan. It's just so cheeseball, and it kind of grated on me a little bit. But there's some good jokes. It's worthwhile. It's just not near my top tier. Second part, I'm going with a 6. I need more Lenny and Squiggy in this episode, to be real. I need more Frank and Edna to justify the presence, and even more Carmine to justify his presence. But the girls totally kicking butt to save Fonzie and Richie is incredible. I liked a lot of the lines during the wedding. Overall, it's a lot of fun. It's a fun little caper. That's what I'm be my final word on that.
Nice. Okay. And for myself, doing it separately, I would be, I think, about a 6.5 on part 1, and a pretty solid 7 on part 2. Similar feelings. I would have loved to have seen more Lane and Squiggy. Would have liked to have seen more location footage, but I do. There's a kind of a low budget charm to me. Like I kind of get a giggle out of like just the barn with those floors, the danceable floors, just makes me laugh. And I really like the fight scene in part 2, which is really one of the strong suits of that episode, as well as also I think Zwick is able to get a certain type of performance out of Ron that's a little different than the way Jerry gets performances out of him. That just kind of the timing and energy, the rhythm of it is a little different. So I like seeing those changes. And when it comes to like the Hoedown Showdown, I mean, part of my brain is even thinking like, is this a precursor to the FP? Like, has this gotten Jason Tross territory, and therefore that always gets a little extra boost for me.
Yeah.
And the duck puppets are also adorable. So those elements, and so altogether, like collectively, I would get again kind of average this out to like a 7, maybe a 7.5, just because it's a stronger 2-parter, especially like together, than some of the other 2-parters that Laverne and Shirley has had in the past. Because the cruise didn't work for me as well because it was a little too disjointed.
By the way, if I'd just seen the truncated 1-episode version with the Ralph and Potsy Save the Day ending, that's a 4.
Yeah.
That version of the episode's a 4.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not leading to the other show, I would have felt very ripped off by that. But I think if there's a reason to watch this 2-parter, it's because of Cindy and Penny. I think they're the strongest part of this. Their interplay, their dialogue, the way they just keep talking back and forth to each other all throughout the square dancing, I think is really funny. That they just have this this endless conversation between them. That they can just get into this conversational rhythm, and they just keep going, no matter where they are or what situation they're in. And I was thinking of a review of the movie Grey Gardens, where where I think Roger Ebert said that Big Edie and Little Edie form a closed system between the two of them. They have a way of communicating between themselves that makes sense to each other and to themselves, but may not make any sense to the rest of the world. They have a closed 2-person system. Yeah. And Laverne and Shirley are a closed 2-person system. They have this interplay that is strictly their own.
Yes.
And I don't even think Richie and Fonzie have that. Richie and Fonzie definitely have a chemistry of their own, but I don't even think theirs is as rich as Laverne and Shirley's.
And like from the beginning, the central relationship of Laverne and Shirley was Laverne and Shirley. At its core, Laverne and Shirley is a show where the most important relationship in your life is with your best friend.
Yep.
Like I think that's a big part of why season 8 flopped like it did, because it begins with Shirley getting married and leaving Laverne, and who really wanted to see that?
Nobody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nobody. I think the way Cindy addressed this is the way it ought to be put. She said that she and Penny had a weird telepathy. The two of them understood each other completely without having to speak to each other. And that kind of ended up being part of who the characters are. We say it again and again on Night After Night that the most important relationship definitely is between the girls. The point is that no man really can come between them. The point is that they will put each other over any person who tries to get in their way. And when the show ultimately falters, it's when, they end up putting a man over the relationship. And that's just true. Yeah. And that's why, and even more, the 4-way relationship between the girls and the boys is an entirely interesting thing.
Yeah, their dynamic kind of works wherever you put them. You can kind of cut and paste them into any situation or any geographic location, and it still works. So I can't even. I'm trying to imagine Laverne and Shirley without Shirley. Rather, it would be like it's not the same. It wouldn't be the same. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the title makes no sense now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can explain this. I can explain it. they wanted to change the title to Laverne and Company or something like that, and Penny said, "No, you can't do that. It'll look like I forced Cindy out." So that's why it's Laverne and Shirley all the way till the show ends.
Yeah, so that's probably for the best. I mean, it probably would have been better if it. I guess it probably would have been better if it never happened. That sounds like a really mean thing to say, but yeah.
Yeah. What would have been best would be if they had come to some kind of an agreement about how they were treating Cindy during her pregnancy. The whole thing happened was because the labor practices were not good, and that is why she sued them, and that's what happened. If they had treated the whole situation correctly, she might have finished out the show. Heck, maybe they would have killed Walter off, and this would have been the two of them and the baby, which would have been interesting. I think everyone would have gone for that.
Oh, that would have been fun. That
would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I would have been totally down for Laverne and Shirley raising a baby together. Yeah. That would have been...
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, Peter, you and I, we're going to have to adjust in a couple seasons here to Fonzie without Richie. So...
yeah. But, like, they do, like, you know, like, you're still going to have Howard and Mary, and Joni is going to stick around for the most part, even when Joni Loves Chachi is happening. And they're going to bring in Roger to be the replacement Richie. So
yes, they're going to bring in a replacement Richie, but it's never going to have that core of the show. And
I'm just trying to imagine. I'm just trying to imagine, what is the replacement Richie's name? Is it like
it's Roger?
Mitchie?
It's
Roger. Okay.
It's Roger.
Yeah.
Oh damn it!
And he's played by the.
You ruined my joke, guys. Come on, I was going to call him Mitchie.
Go ahead.
I was going to call him Mitchie instead of Richie.
Yeah, he's played by the iconic Ted McGinley.
Yep.
Who gets a bad rap that he does not deserve.
Yeah, so that's what I think is missing from the later seasons of Happy Days, is that sense of resonance that you only get from being on the air so many years. So, and also Potsy becomes totally irrelevant. They don't know what.
Yeah, and the same happens to Lori Beth, which really sucks because it would have been nice to develop her outside of her relationship with Richie.
Yeah. I really liked Lori Beth in the one little bit we get of her in this episode. I have like vague memories of enjoying her when I watched the show last. But she's really really nice.
Oh, I think on our show on our show we love Lori Beth, I think.
Yeah, Lori Beth is pretty delightful. And she can do way better than Richie. I say this as someone who had what I thought was a crush on Richie that turned out to actually be I want to wear all of his clothes.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Hey, at least you figured it out, unlike poor Shirley, who continues to go after doctors when it's like, just Shirley, become a veterinarian, for God's sake.
Yeah. Her life would be so much better if she just did that, honestly.
But I think Cindy and Penny are so great through these two. Mm-hmm. Even though the ratings don't reflect it, I think Cindy and Penny's chemistry is still great.
As I said before, this is really actually the show at its peak in a lot of ways. Season 5 is so good. Season 5 is so incredible. And honestly, the ratings were pitiful. And it's hard to believe that the ratings were so bad when you look at these episodes. And then you find out that season 6, season 7, even season 8 got better ratings than this. Season 8.
Oh, that's crazy.
Season 8.
Yeah.
People did not. Well, people did not know what they had back then.
Yeah.
I can't really say that this was still Happy Days at its peak. Happy Days basically had been in decline for quality-wise, I think probably for a couple of seasons, or at least a season by now. So I can't say that Happy Days was still at peak of freshness here.
Yeah. Season 6 and season 7 are kind of flailing and also resting on their laurels at the same time, which is a weird combination.
Yeah.
And then once Ron Howard and Don Most leave, they just start flailing more.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really get trying to redefine the show. But so I think the show maybe it's about as good as Happy Days is going to get in season 7. I don't know if Peter, you can speak more knowledgeably to that. Is there great stuff coming up in season 7 for us?
There's some good stuff. I don't know if I would say great. I might be misremembering some of it. So.
Oh, we got Roaring 20s coming up.
Oh, we do. That's going to be great.
Oh, we got the Roaring 20s coming up. That's awesome. Does Laverne and Shirley ever get to do that, like historical flashbacks where they put the characters in other time
Oh
periods?
yeah. There's one coming if I recall.
Yeah. There's actually an episode. There's a ghost possession episode that happens with a ghost from the 20s possesses Laverne. That happens.
Oh,
Wow.
Season 8.
Well, we're about to do our first sort of Happy Days in Another Time Period episode because we're about to. Tomorrow, I think we're recording our review of the first Thanksgiving.
Oh.
So
Yep.
we get to see them in.
Oh,
We get to see them in pilgrim costumes
Oh.
and stuff.
Oh, my
Oh,
gosh.
and also there's American Musical where Fonzie teaches Chachi about American history through.
Oh God, I've seen that
Yeah.
one. Oh
yeah,
no.
it's so bad.
Oh God.
Well, let's all count our blessings here. Season 7 was the first season that Scott Baio was added to the opening credits of Happy Days. No. But I'm saying he's not here. He's not in Shotgun Wedding at all, other than the opening scene. He's like,
I have an amazing thing to say is, okay, so my mother, I always watch these episodes with the mom to get notes.
I love your
And
mom.
let me just quickly double check the notes here. She asked which of the cast, as the Happy Days credits are rolling on, which one of them went on to become jerks, and she nodded approvingly when I flipped off Scott Baio when his face came on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have before discussed the fact that there are allegations against Scott Baio, and we're not going to get into that right now. But yeah, you can look it up for yourself regarding his behavior on the set of Charles in Charge. Content warning for child sexual abuse and regular child abuse.
Yeah.
And
So
to that note, just quick, Lisa, if I recall, I have it written down, but you have a note about something about Mick Foley regarding Chachi.
Oh, Mick Foley, the professional wrestler who is also a really, really well-known self-autobiographer. He's a big Happy Days fan, and he likes all of his episodes de-Chachinated, the pre-Chachi season.
Well, Nick at Night used to have a little ad campaign. Do you want your episodes chachinated or de-chachinated? So
that was what he was referencing.
they leaned into that. But the weird thing about Happy Days is that it's a lot like Saturday Night Live in that you have to prove yourself as a featured player before you get promoted to the main cast.
Yeah, I was going to mention on Laverne and Shirley something similar happens with David and Michael. They start at the back of the pack with the guest credits, and then they start getting a credit that's textual. Then they get their pictures in the credits. And this season, Eddie and Phil and Betty all get their pictures at the back of the credits. And then finally in season 6, they move to the front of the credits. Then that takes a long time for them to finally end up in front of the show, but they do it.
The weirdest opening credits combination is in season 8 when I think the only two people in the opening are just Penny and David.
Eddie's in there.
At one point.
Eddie's in there, but he does not get a name credit, I don't think. And
Okay.
neither does... I'm pretty sure nobody else does. I don't think Phil does. That does anybody else, as I was going to say.
So I think there's a version I saw where the only two credited people were Penny and David.
Yep, that exists.
And so
that exists.
So it was the Laverne and Squiggy show basically, I guess, because Michael was off filming Spinal Tap.
Yep. He and Gary had an agreement that allowed him to get out of the back 6 when that happened. He said, if we get backers, I'm going to leave and film this movie, and Gary okayed that. And that's why he's not.
Oh, okay. It's fair.
That's why he's in half the season and not.
It's important to remember that when they filmed Shotgun Wedding, they were all full of enthusiasm. This was going to work. They were going to have Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley on 2 different nights. This was going to like double the popularity of them. It was going to be like, so everything was coming up roses when they filmed this thing. So they have no idea what's headed their way. And we'll see in the episodes coming up whether, they look dispirited in the later episodes in this season.
And now I just want I want a picture of Dorian Gray of that photo, the wedding photograph. they just get sadder. They get happier and happier in the photo and sadder in real life.
Oh God.
Yes. When they filmed this, it was all still a hit.
Yes. Yep. It needs kind of a sad Ken Burns voiceover for the picture.
Look the slow zoom with a slight pan across. Yeah.
Dear Gary, this season will be the best ever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm imagining it's for some reason I can't remember the exact line, but it's like the actor who does it, but also for some reason I'm imagining a voiceover in the from the guy at the front of Laura. I shall never forget that day of the shotgun wedding.
Beautiful.
So
anyway,
okay.
But yeah, does that I think that kind of wraps us up though? Yeah,
that wraps it up. I don't have anything more to say.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to mention is that how much fun the episode really is in real big chunks. It's real good. It's real fun. It's a fun one. Yeah. Folks should watch us.
Yeah.
Yep. It's good time.
That's the 2-second version of this podcast. It's fun. You should watch it. Goodbye. Good night.
That happens on our normal podcast where it's like, so what'd you think of this one? And I'm like, it was good.
Yeah. But that was us watching Take Our Plants, Please. Yeah, it was all right.
That's right. Anyway, so thank you again, everybody out there in the wild wilderness of the World Wide Web, or wherever you may be listening to this podcast. If you would like to join our companions at These Days Are Ours, you can find them at thesedaysaroours.libsyn.com, and you can find us at Night After Night Pod on many different platforms. Now, you folks also have your Twitter, and you do social stuff. Do you want to promote your social media accounts a little bit?
Oh, heck yeah. Fonzie Podcast is our Twitter account for the show, and I hope it's very much worth following, because I there's a lot of stuff in there about our podcast and a lot about Happy Days in general.
It is absolutely worth following. Joe does a great job running it. Yeah. He's consistently one of the most interesting and funny presences on Twitter, and I'm not just saying that because I'm biased. I am completely right in this case.
Well, thank you, Peter. Do you want to plug your personal Twitter?
Oh, yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter Volfranc. That's PETERVULFRANC.
And they can follow me on Twitter at Joe_A_Blevins. And I'm resisting the urge to say the rest of our podcast plug that I say at the end of every goddamn show that we have.
No. You're the guest. Chill, dude. I got it. Anyway.
No, because I have this whole spiel that I do, but also buy my book. Anybody who's listening,
buy Joe's book.
Buy my book. It's called Dad Made Dirty Movies. It's at Amazon and Barnes and Noble and wherever bookstores used to be. Because I think bookstores used.
My stuff. Oh, why'd you have to say it like that? My hat.
It's. Well, the dream for it would have been, that there would have still been all these bookstores open, and we would have toured with it or something. But it didn't work out that way. But you can still get it at Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and
I'm sure Powell's will have a copy of it. So yeah, down the line.
And it's in some libraries. If I've heard it's in some librabraries. So yeah, do those libraries.
Just do a library tour. There you go.
But don't do that. I need some royalties.
All right. Cool. And for us folks at Night After Night, you can find us at Night After Night Pod on Facebook, Tumblr, Facebook, Tumblr, Patreon, and WordPress. And we have these episodes on YouTube. Occasionally we have additional YouTube content. By this point, we'll probably have a couple of other. Actually, yeah, we'll have at least 4 top 5s for the different seasons and things of that nature by the time this episode goes up. And on Twitter, you can find us at Night Aft Night PC, where we do a lot of different commentary stuff. Our community is kind of burgeoning. At the time of this recording, which, by the way, full disclosure, we're recording this in April of 2021. So if any of y'all even made it to the end of all this, you're going to be like, if they haven't tuned out already from all the anachronistic, what are they talking about? Why does this sound like they recorded a long time ago? It's because we did. Yeah. And so yeah, but a bunch of the cool stuff is there. You can join us for good laughs. I made the animated GIFs, which I've learned not to say the way I normally say it. Otherwise, my girlfriend gets very upset.
I don't really mind.
By the way, I really want to endorse your YouTube channel. The content was so well produced. I felt bad about myself after visiting your channel,
Oh,
I
really?
was like, oh no. I was like, oh my gosh. So definitely. There's a YouTube channel for us, but it is just our show with nothing. So it's just
that was us for a long time. So it's all about a start. It's never too late to start. It's never too late to start deciding, oh, I'm going to do a top 5 for the end of this season and do it as in between. And then realizing, oh my God, I have to edit a 25-minute video in 4 days.
well, that was what got me, was the editing and on it. I thought was really beautifully done. So
thank you. I really appreciate that.
I was
I
blown
mean,
away.
And I know this is obviously I am biased in this point, but I really enjoy doing the top 5 episodes because Lisa does a humongous amount of research for them, and it takes us a long time to put them together. Yeah. So it's always good.
I'm terribly proud of the season 2 one. I'm really, really proud of the season 2 one. I especially have did.
If you haven't checked those out in Night After Nightland, wow, check them out right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and matter of fact, why don't we just go ahead and get to what's on the next episode, and then people will be free to go do so. So yeah, so as we say farewell to these days being, actually they're still yours. They're not ours. They're yours, and so
no,
they are ours and no one else's.
So you would say these days are theirs,
right? These days are theirs, so they're going. Yeah, okay. So as we say farewell, but we will be moving into the rest of season 5. And Lisa, my love, my darling, what is it we have next? I noticed. Is that something behind the oven?
Carmine and Laverne make out. This is one heck of a note.
Oh, goodness gracious me.
That's how I'm going to throw a moment, and I stand behind that.
Sounds super hot, I gotta say.
I know multiple people who feel that way. I know we're doing that.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thanks again so much to Joe and Peter for being our guests, and we thank you so much for listening to our long, rambling on, and we hope that you out there within the world are just having yourselves a good day. And this will probably going up in the year 2022, actually. So to you in the future, has the flying car been invented yet? Have we had UFOs destroy everything? Has Cthulhu finally gotten out of bed?
Is COVID finally over?
That would, yes, and that also as well. Yeah, I usually go for the fantasy stuff, but yes, that's a much more pressing issue. I don't know. Just send a quantum paper airplane back at us. We'll see you next time.
Don't get lost if you're Sam Beckett.